We'll go ahead and get started. I call the meeting to order of the Manassas Park governing body for April 14th, 2020. Before we begin, we have just a little housekeeping to take care of. I want to again extend our thanks to the school division for graciously hosting the governing body in the school board chambers. On a procedural note, 2 of our governing body members have decided to participate electronically via teleconference, and their remote participation is per previously adopted city policy. This is for the purpose of maintaining an in-person quorum per the Code of Virginia. Whether a governing body member is participating electronically or is actually in person, all 7 governing body members will be participating equally. And this includes the ability to vote, which is in compliance with the meeting laws in the Code of Virginia. Also, per the Code of Virginia, each council member will need to state the location from which they're participating prior to the governing body present here voting approval of their participation. So I would state each council member's name, and they will say where they are for the record. Council member Miriam Machado.
Hello everyone, this is Councilwoman Miriam Machado. I'm calling from my home, 9304 Alexa Court, Manassas Park, Virginia.
Thank you. Councilmember Hasib Javed.
Yes, good evening. I am located at my residence at 9420 Sonia Court.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve their participation remotely?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Items 8F and 8G will be moved after 8H and 8I, so the 2 F and G will be just flipped for H and I. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda? And City Attorney, is there any closed session?
No, Mayor, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved as amended.
Second.
Okay, let's do our folks at home first. Councilmember Machado, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. All the folks here?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We have an agenda. Okay, please join us in a moment of silence. And Councilmember Shoemaker, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has anyone provided any input for public comment, either through phone call or email, anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. And there is no one present in the chamber here, so we will move on. Item number 4 is presentations and recognitions. We have a proclamation recognizing Panorama Latino TV show for celebration of their 20th anniversary. And that reads, whereas the community service Spanish language television program Panorama Latino TV show was created and produced since April 2001 by Stephanie Williams, President of Spanish and English Resources, LLC, after a preventable fire took the lives of a Hispanic family in our local area right after Christmas many years ago. And whereas this life-saving and life-enriching informational show has been made possible since its inception by the Northern Virginia Electric Cooperative, NOVEC, and Comcast Cable. And whereas the show has engaged the participation of the City of Manassas Park Police and Fire Departments, the City of Manassas Park Public Schools, and other city departments and organizations, in addition to numerous local, state, and national organizations, including the Regional Gang Prevention Task Force, the Regional Human Trafficking Task Force, the IRS, the Social Security Administration, the U.S. Census Bureau, Novant Health, and the Town of Dumfries. Whereas the show, which airs on Comcast Channel 2 on Fridays at 8:30 p.m. and on YouTube, has been made possible through the dedication of many volunteers, including longtime stage manager and administrative assistant Alan Beaverstock, longtime co-host Suzanne Alvarez-Piscoda, production assistant Maria Kennedy, student segment host Roberto Rolong, co-host and social media manager Francisco Vega, and taping director Ingrid Paz. Now therefore be it resolved that the Manassas Park governing body does hereby commend Stephanie Williams and each of her team members, as well as Northern Virginia Electric Cooperative and Comcast Cable, and expresses its gratitude for their leadership in mentoring and motivating our Hispanic community so they may live successful lives in the city of Manassas Park and throughout Northern Virginia. Be it further resolved that in celebration of the 20th anniversary of Panorama Latino TV show, the Manassas Park governing body sincerely thanks Stephanie Williams, creator and executive producer, and her entire team, in addition to Northern Virginia Electric Cooperative and Comcast Cable, for implementing this valuable show and providing the city of Manassas Park with greater outreach to its Hispanic residents. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, let's do our folks at home. Councilmember Machado, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed, how do you vote? Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
Folks here, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. And I believe Ms. Williams has requested a tape of this, so City Clerk will take care of that. Thank you, Lena. Okay, there's no information items. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of March 31st, 2020. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, there's no unfinished business, so moving on to new business. First is the library strategic plan and policies.
Okay, so just as a reminder to everyone, we're going to email out tonight. I spoke to the state contact for the Library of Virginia, and they're okay with email policies tonight or even tomorrow. They said they would accept that. So the goal is tonight just to adopt the strategic plan and policies to forward to the state, and then my recommendation would be there's a lot of discussion on it that we schedule sometime in the summer post-COVID-19 to do a deeper dive if we need to for updating these. The documents that were in the packet were the Library Advisory Board's recommended strategic plan and recommended library policies to you all. The first draft, again, was done by LS&S based off of kind of models from around the country, and then the Library Advisory Board had their inaugural meeting where they reviewed these documents and made recommended edits for you all. Since that time, you all have sent additional comments for what you would like to see edited in the document, and then our city attorney has done a review of the documents themselves, and that was emailed to you all today. And I have open here both the strategic plan and the library policies in case we want to review any specific additional components. And Dean, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I didn't. In the email, I just mentioned that I cleaned up just to make consistency throughout the document, and I also took what I believe was the consensus that I had gotten. Since many of you didn't respond, I had to take a little bit of liberty as far as what I changed, but with the understanding that this is just basically a toehold to get us in for financing purposes, And then if there are a lot of discussion items, then we could do that later on, and even before July 1st if you really wanted to.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, City Manager, for checking on the emailing. Are there any comments, or has everyone had the opportunity to look over the documents? Okay.
I would say the one area, just from the Prince William,
Can you speak?
oh, sorry, just from my experience on the library board in terms of the Prince William system, is just to be careful about the section in here about, I don't want to say gift giving, but that's not the right word, but when people want to donate money and have things named after them, that can get really tricky. I know one of their policies is that, like, if somebody wants to have a room named after them or something, that they want that person to have some connection to Prince William County or to the library specifically. I guess I just as a warning, kind of to tread lightly, because it can be an area that, like, they actually had, their library director does this, and so they came to the board about somebody wanted to name a room and give money, and ended up being declined because she didn't have any connection with that library or with the system, or kind of Prince William wasn't a strong association.
No,
So
and that's completely understandable
Right.
concern. And I had a concern, which was why I added to the section on gifts.
Yeah.
I was concerned about gifts over 5,000 that were contingent upon something. So
right,
that-
that's just kind of,
that
I
was a
did it as
big
more of a
concern,
warning,
yeah.
just that, as we go forward, that we may have individuals or groups that may, because I don't know, I didn't see in here, do they need to live in Manassas Park or have a connection to Manassas Park in order to have like a room named
No,
after
but
them?
that might be something to consider adding, whether we add it this evening or whether we
Right.
add it in the future. But, yeah, it needs to be discussed thoroughly and have a
Right.
lot of input. So,
Yeah.
since we didn't receive anything from you ahead of time,
Yeah, it was something I kind of thought of last minute because I was thinking about just things I'd looked at, and I was, on the surface, I was like, oh, this looks like a good document, went through the library board. That's why we have them, because they're supposed to be the experts about what we want to do. But it just kind of was one of those things, like, did I have any last minute thoughts? And that was one thing that kind of triggered for me was, because you don't want the appearance of people buying access, in that sense.
absolutely. That was my concern with the $5,000 and more.
Yeah.
And
So-
since we're not going to be here forever, staff won't be here forever, that's why I wanted city manager in conjunction with conversation with the governing body.
Yeah.
But,
Maybe that's
that-
a task they can follow up on.
right,
Maybe
right.
maybe have more.
It doesn't have to be
specific
added
guidelines.
this evening.
I
No.
can add just a line, because I'm there at the section, if you want to look at
Yeah.
the screen, where it said gifts valued over $5,000 as well as conditional. I can just add a statement right after that. Any requests for naming of rooms or facilities would require governing body approval. Would that be?
It just was something that they
Well,
have big enough facilities where they can name, like, they'll do like
Yeah.
I don't know, the Jeanette Rischel, some room, or something. They'll name individual rooms after people if they give money to the system.
Well, and I think to Councilmember Shoemaker's point, that they must have some connection with the city. We might want to discuss that also.
Okay. But no changes
Yeah.
tonight, just some,
I would think this warrants further discussion prior to putting some, but if you want to suggest verbiage, that's fine.
Well, yeah, maybe just, maybe the thought of, that we just add that, that either the person lives in Manassas Park or has a sustained connection to the city, maybe they're an employee or, but
I would
that-
say sustained connection would probably be less limiting.
Right, I mean, it would either be a resident or somebody
Yeah.
that's
Right,
resident-like,
right.
even if they
Mhm.
didn't live here.
Or former
Yeah.
resident.
Yeah.
I mean, just maybe one sentence probably
Sure.
would probably
Sure.
do, would probably do enough.
So how does that read now?
Yeah, it's not typing.
no, I don't think this keyboard works.
Something just typed.
Yes.
Oh.
how do you propose we do this then, since we, if it's,
Just here, but what about just say, gifts over $5,000 as well as conditional gifts will be reviewed and accepted, et cetera, just like it says, and something, gifts received with a request for naming rights, or, let's see, donors who request naming rights must have a connection with the city or something to that effect, just very simple, so we don't get it overly complex.
Right, I mean, I'm not looking for some, it just was just what the recognition.
Oh, it looks like he's able to do it now, okay.
Sustained connection to the city.
I would think it would be more than a casual connection, it should be a sustained connection. But
Should I
that's,
add
that's,
and require governing body approval?
Yeah.
Well, that would be over $5,000, right?
That's where I'm adding.
Because you're
yeah.
putting it in that paragraph, isn't it kind of assumed?
Oh, is it, okay, after consult, yeah, so the governing body's already being consulted, you're right. I didn't realize that was changed since the library advisory board.
Oh,
version.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
we,
Okay.
we might make it upon recommendation of city manager to the governing body, and then,
It's already outlined in there, Dean's right. So the
Okay.
process for all those gifts, the process is accepted by city manager after consultation with the governing body. So I would have to bring you essentially what people are requesting in terms of in exchange for the gifts. And if you have any objections, you would raise them and maybe add them to an agenda to discuss further.
okay.
Right? I mean, that sounds like how it's laid out up there.
Yeah, it's in the same paragraph requiring governing body. And I guess if there was a gift of $300 and they wanted naming rights of, say, the wastebasket, I mean, I guess the director of Parks and Rec would have the final
Yeah.
say.
I can
Let's-
add it to both, right? And then for the valued 5,000 less, add the same thing and require approval by the governing body.
Yeah, and see, I think it, like tonight, we're possibly that's okay for where we are right now, because this is something we're probably going to want to massage a little bit better anyway. This gets us a toehold. So at the bare minimum, if we come in right out of the gate and there's a big, donor that wants to give a big chunk of money, at least we have something in place.
Right.
I think I was just going to hit enter. It's a separate line, if this thing wants to work.
let me know when you're done, because I can't see it all that well.
It's not cooperating.
And the screen is quivering for some reason on,
Yeah. Okay.
It's not typing, Lazo.
I think it's just delayed.
Oh, Jesus. While we're waiting for the technology, Bart, may I bring up that the library board, and I need to contact her and see if she has a quorum, is they plan to meet on April 23rd in person. So if, we can do it offline, but just if there's anything you want me to take with me to them, because it may be, Michelle Castellano may be coming in for closed session, because that was scheduled for March, but the March meeting was canceled because of the situation, but she may come to us for closed session as part of that April meeting. I'm not 100% sure, because it's kind of a moving target right now, so maybe after the meeting.
right.
Okay.
Do you want to read what you have so far?
Yes, hold on 1 second. It's like skipping letters as I type. Okay. There we go. It worked. So donors who request naming rights must have a sustained connection to the city and requires governing body approval. Just a standalone sentence.
Well, how about instead of requiring governing body, that doesn't quite make sense. Just say, have a sustained connection to the city and receive governing body approval.
Thank you very much. I gotta figure it out. And receive?
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry.
Whoa. And receive. Governing body approval. Okay.
Okay.
that worked.
Let's go to our folks at home. Councilmember Machado, do you have any comments?
No, so we reviewed both documents, I also read the changes, I agree with.
Councilmember Javed, do you have any comments?
regarding this section, or, because I do have two comments.
Oh, well, by all means, please.
Okay, sure. It was in regards to the lost book fines. The addendum E. It doesn't have any verbiage in there stating how long the book needs to be lost for, to be considered lost. Some type of verbiage after 6 or 8 weeks, their account will be charged $25, or is there some type of time limit?
Yes, this is Jennifer Giltrap from LS&S, and the reason that's not in there yet is we're still establishing the checkout periods, which then would follow with due dates and how long the items would be kept out before they're turned into loss. We would be bringing that back to the library board at their next meeting to approve.
I see, all right, thank you. And then my second comment is, that would the state require an employee handbook from LS&S? Because I don't see that attached to the,
Would the state require, you're asking?
Well, the state's not going to require it. That's something that a company or can do, and then that becomes part of their employment contract, but it's not required in Virginia.
Can you speak directly into your microphone?
Yeah, in Virginia, it's not required to have an employee handbook. If you do have one, if you do decide to do one, you're bound by it, but you're not required to do it. I'm sure LS&S has employee handbooks, though, because they're all over the country.
Yes, LS&S does have an employee handbook.
is that something we can request?
We can request it, yes.
LS&S, are you guys okay?
With the documents, yes?
Oh, you mean to be part of this? I suggest you just get a copy of it just for our records, because they can change that on whenever they want.
Right.
Do you have any follow-up questions? Councilmember Javed?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I think this is good. I think eventually I'm foreseeing like a wireless network access policy for those who are using the network, and make sure they're looking at decent and legal material. But that's later on once we get going with the library.
Just a note also, if people can bring their mics closer to their mouths, because I think people from home had difficulty hearing last time, because I would turn like this,
Okay.
so just make sure we're speaking to the mic.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, staff recommendation is that the governing body review attached Library Advisory Board recommended strategic plan and policies, documents for the city library, and make any needed edits and adopt them for submission to the Library of Virginia, and that would include suggestions and alterations made this evening. Do we have a motion?
I move the amended document.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Javed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Machado,
Aye.
all in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next is Social Services appointment to the Community Policy and Management Team, CPMT.
Randy, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Good to hear your voices.
Randy.
How are you, Randy? Welcome.
Great, thank you.
Would you like to tell us, for our benefit and for the benefit of the folks at home, give us some more information, perhaps some deeper idea of how the CPMT functions and how this came about, just some basic information.
Sure. The CPMT oversees the Children's Services Act funding for at-risk youth in the community. This appointment is to fill the private provider requirement that we need to have as a participant on the committee. We had an individual step down and interviewed some eligible individuals who were interested, and ultimately decided that Mr. Schuster had the skill set that we were looking for. A lot of the funding is used towards Manassas Park youth that receive IEPs through the schools. This funding and this committee allows them to get additional services outside of a normal school setting.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Machado.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How long is this appointment?
This is, I believe, is a 2-year appointment.
Were there other participants before the selection?
There were 2 individuals that submitted letters of interest. Both individuals were invited to the open session of the CPMT meeting, where they provided an overview of what they do on a daily basis, and were able to ask the team questions and vice versa. And ultimately, it was decided that Mr. Schuster had the best fit for our needs.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
He was,
Councilmember Javed, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to say, I know his resume is not part of the record, but when we were reading it, seemed very, very highly qualified with a broad range of experience.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, staff recommendation is for Manassas Park CPMT recommends appointing Mr. Lawrence Schuster as the private provider representative.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado,
Aye.
Councilmember Javed,
Aye.
all in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you. Be safe.
Okay, next we'll move on to 8C. That would be approval of inspection proposals from Bowman Consulting.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Welcome, Calvin.
Okay, before you tonight, we're bringing a proposal from our city engineers, Bowman Consulting, to have our annual structure inspections conducted. We don't have a choice but to provide this inspection for the Manassas Drive Russia Branch culvert, as it's a culvert in VDOT's inventory. So we're required to produce an annual inspection report every year for that. However, since we have sort of discovered the nature of the beast with Mosby Drive culvert, and we really felt as though we were sort of behind on that project and understanding the poor condition of that culvert. Kirby Street culvert was constructed around the same time frame and the same materials. So as a matter of caution, we're going to have the Kirby Street culvert inspected as well. That will guide our urgency to move forward with that project, and also inform, what strategies we use to repair that culvert. So each one of those inspections and reports is around $7,600, $7,592 per inspection. We are a little short in the streets professional services line item, so we're going to take the remaining $2,200 out of streets contract services. If it so pleases the body. But staff recommendation is that we go ahead and move forward with this. We do have a due date on providing the actual Russia Branch culvert inspection.
Thank you, Calvin. I have a quick question. Are both of these inspections going to happen on the same day, or are they scheduled for different times?
I'm not sure. We don't usually control their scheduling, but it's likely too much for them to do all in one day. They may spend an entire day at Russia Branch. So I'm not sure. I can certainly find out and get back to you, though.
I was just thinking in terms of saving on funding. Often when we combine projects, that we save on staging costs and things of that nature, so that was the only reason I was asking.
To see if they even, since they don't have equipment essentially to mobilize except for cameras and vehicles, I don't think that I saw a mobilization fee in their actual price list. So that would normally be what we would be saving as a mobilization or a travel fee. And I did not see that. I'm looking through the proposal right now. And I don't see one really quickly. So we can certainly get with them, see if that is an issue, if they have hidden some travel charges in there, and ask for them to reduce those if it so pleases the body.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Any questions or comments?
My only question was, it says it's coming out of streets, is that VDOT, is that MVTA money, is that 30% money, is that city money,
It's in the operating budget, so the VDOT annual contributions do cover the entire streets division budget. So technically it's VDOT money being utilized for this, but it's from the annual operation maintenance funds, not the capital VDOT money.
Yes, since both of these are publicly maintained streets that are in VDOT's urban inventory, these inspections count towards our VDOT urban maintenance expenditures.
Thank you. Councilmember Machado, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I see that these improvements will be done, or this is scheduled for year 2022 and year 2023. Calvin, do you think these projects can wait until then?
So the reason that we're requiring or requesting the actual inspection of the Kirby Street culvert is to sort of guide that timeline. What happened with Mosby was we weren't aware exactly how bad the condition of the Mosby Drive culvert was. We had a major flooding incident one night, and we were out there for days pulling the wing wall section and stabilizing the culvert with riprap. Now that we're finally through a designed repair, we've now spent another few years with the culvert deteriorating, and everyone's very uneasy about the condition of the culvert, and we're rushing through a project. If the Kirby Street inspection were to show that we need to get out there and execute quickly, we would speed up that timeline, and we wouldn't be aiming for FY22, FY23. We would probably move forward with a recommendation to expend stormwater enterprise funds to go ahead and do a concrete bottom repair to the culvert to stabilize it and prevent any deterioration in the very near future. So that's why we really want this report. We don't typically have the Kirby Street culvert inspected, but as of late, from the things we're hearing with contractors who are coming out to look at the Mosby Street culvert, the Mosby Drive culvert, we have some concerns. We'd like to address those. Let engineers give us a formal report on the condition.
Thank you, Calvin.
Councilmember Javed, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I just have one question regarding the frequency of the inspection. I wasn't clear if they are doing the underwater inspection or they're not doing the underwater inspection within that same fee.
The underwater portion of it?
Correct.
If they can get out there and they can do it and the conditions are favorable, then they will certainly do it. If the conditions are not favorable and they have to rush the inspection to deliver the report on time, they likely will not provide that portion.
But if they do the underwater, is that an additional cost?
No, that was in the proposal, was it not?
It was unclear to me if it was added or not. That's what my question is.
I thought it did.
I think that fell into the field investigation portion. Sorry, I was trying to read through it and put the verbiage together. Yeah, every report I've seen to date, they have actually accessed the culvert they've accessed the material underwater to determine the condition, the bottom condition of the pipe. But I can't find right here in this language really quickly, that they are actually guaranteeing that they'll do that for this price. But normally, if the conditions were favorable when they would be out there, they would make the investigation of the bottom condition of the pipe to the fullest extent possible.
It's on page 73 of our packet, so I think it's probably page 5, under exclusions, it's number 3. It says no underwater inspections are required.
And for the Mosby culvert especially, we have already worked with Bowman in past inspections to understand, essentially, we have bottom to the culvert at Russia Branch. There are holes developing at the water line. Alan may not have felt that it was actually necessary for the Kirby Street culvert or the Russia Branch this go-round. But they will likely do the inspection, or at least give us an advisory nod as to the bottom condition of the pipe, whether or not they formally do the full underwater televising and everything like that.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councilmember Javed?
No, I think thanks for pointing out the page, whoever that was, sorry. Yeah, I was wondering if the fee would, if they do it, is it going to come back to the city, or is DDOT going to cover it? That's all my question.
DDOT doesn't typically require it. The DDOT's report is attached, I believe. What they actually are required, the required information on the report. And I don't believe that they're actually required to do the underwater inspection. I know we did not do it last year for Russia Branch, and we still successfully submitted to DDOT. So, part of this is just trying to meet the deadline for the due date for the VDOT annual inspection report. The other part, the Kirby part, is trying to make sure that we are guiding our capital investments and trying to make sure we're on a correct timeline for Kirby Street.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Banks, did you have a question?
Yeah, Calvin, I'm just trying to figure out the rate of deterioration for the culverts and asking about their service life. In terms of the two that's being inspected, or is it about that time that they need to be replaced anyway, or is this before their service lifespan?
I think in the time that these were installed, you're talking late 80s, mid 90s, and I think at that point in time, people still had faith that these were 50-year plus structures. In the 2000s, now if we were installing corrugated metal piping, it would have a coating applied to it for sure. It would not just be raw corrugated metal, galvanized corrugated metal. It would have an additional coating added to it, because I think what's been discovered is both the soils and the water flowing through the pipe are variable compositions, and you can't get a uniform deterioration rate across a geographical area as soon as you expand that geographical area, because the soil conditions are different and the water conditions are different. Are we just unlucky to have soils and water that deteriorate galvanized pipe faster? It's quite possible. But we do know that this condition that we're seeing in these pipes is pretty much across the board with every piece of galvanized corrugated metal piping in the city of Manassas Park. The Connor Center, every piece of corrugated metal we've either already ripped out or we're planning to rip out. These larger corrugated structures, we all would like to believe that they would have lasted 50 years. They just didn't. Nowadays, if you were to see a VDOT specification or any other transportation agency specification for corrugated metal storm piping, would almost certainly require that you put an extra plastic or rubberized coating on it to protect it.
Okay, and thanks, Calvin. My final question is, if the findings after the inspection are that the culverts need to be repaired, how long do we have to repair them?
Well, we know that Russell Branch needs replaced. Chances are the repair is not going to be, it's such a complicated project, we wouldn't want to initiate a repair and then do a replacement down the road. We would want to go ahead and just get a more long-term structure in place now. With Kirby, we're already looking at a repair option instead of a replacement option. That's why you see Kirby currently placed in the CIP in the stormwater fund, because we won't actually be affecting the roadway if we can't execute the repair we want to execute. It will just be essentially stabilizing the bottom of the pipe with concrete, which will essentially be a much more affordable repair that will buy us a substantial amount of time before we have to go in and actually excavate and replace the entire culvert. The biggest problem with Kirby is if we excavate and replace that culvert, it is a one-way in, one-way out subdivision. So we'd be in the same condition we are with Mosby, where if something were to happen while we were excavating the culvert to replace it and the culvert were to have a catastrophic failure, we have no way to get people in and out of their homes. So we've had to visit all sorts of options, temporary bridges, temporary stream crossings, alternative connections through the city of Manassas to try to execute the construction of Mosby Drive. We don't want to be in that situation with Kirby. So ideally, we can go in and use a design to line the bottom of the pipe, restabilize it with concrete. Or Russia Branch, it's a go ahead and replace type project because of the amount of traffic on Manassas Drive. We don't want to be working there now and then find out we've got to go back and redo it 10 years from now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Calvin. Staff recommendation is that the governing body authorize the city manager to sign the proposals from Bowman Consulting to provide engineering services for the inspection of the Manassas Drive and Kirby Street culverts in the total amount of $15,184.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thanks again, Calvin.
Thank you.
Okay, and moving on to 8D, which is the purchase of speed alert radar message sign and alert message display.
Chief Lugo, are you on?
Yes, sir, I'm on.
Okay.
Hi, Chief, welcome.
Good morning, good evening, Mayor and City Council members.
Go.
In the past several years, our agency had to decommission 3 of our radar trailers that we had deployed, that we would have the ability to deploy throughout the city. A lot of stuff, the equipment on there was dated, so it wasn't cost effective to replace it. We did some research around to see what other areas were using, and we found out that All Traffic Solution had a system and a display sign that we can use not only for radar, but to also maybe put out messages that the city felt needed to get out for special events or like the COVID-19. So I'm requesting now, if the city approves, give a governing body approval to purchase one of the radar trailer and a messaging display sign, for the total cost being about $24,090. and utilizing asset forfeiture funds to pay for this.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions?
Yeah, does this device have the ability to, like, ticket someone for speeding?
It'll give the ability for us to track speeders and all that, and be able to give some stats in terms of how many people are speeding through the area. I'm not sure if it'll capture the license plate, but I can ask the vendor on that.
That's interesting. Councilmember Machado, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, when these signs stop working, or when do you remove them?
I can barely hear you. I'm sorry, ma'am.
When did these signs stop working? You mentioned that we had it previously, and I remember seeing those. But when was the last time that they worked?
I know 3 of them. We have one that's operational now, and when we get a complaint, we'll deploy them in those areas. The 3 that were decommissioned, I'm not sure when they stopped working. When I took over for chief, I looked at our inventory of equipment, and that was one of the things that were just sitting in our parking lot. So I decided to look into getting them replaced.
Do you have a follow-up? Councilmember?
Yes, where are the new signs going to be located?
They're portable, so I can put them anywhere where we get a complaint, or if we want to do any kind of traffic enforcement.
Okay, thank you. There is a recurring expense for the first year, the yearly subscription for $3,950 is going to be covered. What happens after 2023?
Well, there is a reoccurring expense if you want to continue getting a program. They offer a program which is covered in the initial cost of the system, where you can monitor remotely. If we wanted, say we had an emergency, I can log onto the system and put a message out right away. It also helps out to remotely access the stats, so we don't have to take the unit off the street and take it to the police department to download. So that portion of it, we don't have to renew. I'm hoping that because we're not getting customs to repair our previous ones that we have budgeted, that we can maybe utilize some of those funds to offset the cost for the program.
So in FY23, the plan would be likely to charge us under contract service.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Councilmember Javed, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes. Can you explain what this fund is, and what can we use this fund for? And can we use it for vehicle repairs and stuff like that, or is it just for equipment use?
The state has real strict, and the federal asset forfeiture fund, real strict reason. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on somebody. I'm good? Okay. The asset forfeiture and the federal asset forfeiture funds has real strict rules of what you can use the money for. We can use it to buy certain equipment that is not budgeted. It could be something like this, like a new program where we're trying to get off, put out, the radar trailer, the message display sign. We can't use it to pay for salaries. We can't use it for vehicle maintenance and stuff like that. We could use it for, if we had to purchase an additional vehicle or something, if we had the funds available.
Chief, can you explain how?
Yeah, these funds are built up from asset forfeiture, like from money that's seized or property that's seized from people that commit violent felonies or illegal drug use or distribution of drugs.
Do they have to be found guilty to have their assets forfeited?
No, sir, that's a civil hearing. Normally, the Commonwealth of Virginia and Prince William prefers for the criminal portion to be over before they move over on the civil part, but they do not have to go like that. It could be either one or the other.
possibility exists that somebody is not convicted of a crime can still have assets forfeited.
Yes, sir. But like I said, the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Prince William County prefers for the criminal matter to be completed before they move forward on the civil matter.
So when you say the criminal portion has been completed, that means that they have gone to trial and either been adjudicated guilty or innocent? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, pretty much, yeah. But it does, by code of Virginia, that is not required.
But our Commonwealth Attorney does require that?
It all depends on the Commonwealth that's in charge of the case. I've heard different, things going on over there sometimes where they would just go ahead with the civil if the criminal is taking too long, or vice versa, depending on it.
Okay, thank you.
But for the most part, in my experience, being in a federal task force and a state task force for so long, I would say about 90% of the time the criminal matter has to be completed before we move forward on the civil.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Javed, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was, trying to figure out if there's, a need for this equipment, or can we use the fund for another need that the department needs? That you feel that you're either short or don't have at your disposal right now?
I'm looking for ways to get grant money for this too. I just had one come across my desk yesterday for this for the messaging boards that All Solution is offering. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get it, but I'm looking into it and seeing if we qualify to be able to get funds for that, or if we can use it for something else in the city. Obviously, there's other areas I can use this money for, but being only that I only have one radar trailer and 0 messaging display signs for the police department, I thought this was a good expense right now, especially what's going on with COVID-19.
Thank you, Chief.
And if I can just clarify, so the current balances, Councilman Javed, are $90,000 for the state side and $157,000 on the federal side. Available funds for different equipment that we can continue to explore what to utilize, staying within those guidelines of what we can use that for.
My understanding is they
Yeah,
can...
but, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is the recurring cost is covered in the fund? I missed that part.
Yeah, until FY23, and then we transfer it to normal contract. We're first going to try to use the DMV grant funding. That's written in the memo. If for some reason that's not enough to cover it, then we would use the asset forfeiture until FY23 when the budget improves.
Okay. So, did someone else have a question? I'm sorry, Councilmember Javed, did you finish or not?
I have,
Miriam, you have a
Yes,
question?
sorry.
I'm sorry, it's very confusing.
I have a question. Chief Lugo, in the notes says that the yearly recurring subscription covers device maintenance, among other traffic alerts, pictures. If we don't have this subscription, how are we going to do the devices maintenance?
We would have to pay for them to come out and do the maintenance on it, kind of like we do now with our other custom radar units. We have to pay for somebody to come out and service them and calibrate them and stuff. But if the subscription, it should be covered for any issues that arise with the equipment.
Is there a warranty?
Yeah,
Wait.
There is a warranty. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me. I think it's in my office. I don't have it with me at this time.
Councilmember Machado, did you have a follow-up? I thought I saw you lean towards your laptop.
Yes, we just need to monitor what is expensive to have the subscription, or to how much is going to cost the devices maintenance.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to look into to see, if there is a need throughout this first year we use it. How many times do we have to have them come out? how many times did we access the system remotely, collect the data, or use it to modify a message? If it doesn't look like it's cost effective compared to what we're paying for maintenance, then at that point I would choose to keep the subscription or get rid of it and just pay for the maintenance if it's cost effective.
Thank you.
For
Thank
the
you.
warranty, it's 1 year, so it's on the bottom of page 150. So it's a 1 year warranty. There are warranty extensions, but they would require, so they're available at time of purchase. I'm assuming that would be an additional charge for extended warranty.
Councilmember Javed, did you have a follow-up?
No, if this is covered by the fund, then, I mean, there's no budget impact for the recurring cost, correct?
Correct. No budget impact. Is that correct?
That's correct. And even from a fund balance standpoint, it's not part of any of the either definitional fund balance ratio that we're looking at or the true. It's in a separate committed item that we're not allowed to legally touch.
Okay. Councilmember Sendejas?
Yes, what's the life expectancy for the displays and the sign?
I can barely hear what you said, sir.
What's the life expectancy of the sign and display?
That I don't know, sir.
Okay. And also for the remote management, are there any concerns of security or hacking?
No. The way it works is, I believe, is all through IP addresses, and no, there's no concerns in that.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Banks?
Chief Lugo, I know you mentioned that it's portable. Can this be used in residential neighborhoods on their streets?
Yes, actually, it's not included in this, but I recently purchased a different sign that you can actually put on a stop sign, a speed sign, or any type of sign that lights up and it shows the speed, so it monitors that. The portable one radar trailer can be put anywhere in side streets. The messaging board on the other cannot be left alone because there's no way to secure it. We could put it on a vehicle on a hitch and have the message displayed that way and be able to secure it and leave it there.
See, I think that's great. We talked about the need or whether there's a need for it. And if you talk to, I've heard from residents, whether they're on Stephanie Street or on Lamp, or even on Matthew Drive, they need a sign or some type of deterrent from people speeding on those streets. And I think this would be useful to hopefully stop the speeders from speeding on those residential streets.
Yeah, and the capability of one of these signs is that we can put it on a pole. We don't have to take up parking space either.
Yeah. I think it's very popular with the residents because, and
It
also.
it's a help.
Yeah,
you know.
especially, I know on digital as well, there's a lot of complaints about speeding on
Yeah,
digital.
At least this would discourage people, or we hope. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Chief. The motion is, staff recommendation is that the governing body authorize city manager to purchase both the speed alert radar message sign and alert message display utilizing state asset forfeiture funds.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thanks again, Chief. Okay, and we have flipped the next two, so we'll be moving on to boundary line adjustment deed. That would be Phase 3 1A.
Mayor, we still have the
skip
enterprise fleet
8E.
management program right before that.
I'm sorry?
Agenda item 8E.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 8E, Enterprise, agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management in order to establish a master lease program for the city's fleet of vehicles. Presentation previously given on February 4th.
Okay. Chris, are you on?
I am, Leslie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. And then Enterprise, are you guys on?
Yeah, Casey Wood is on.
Okay, thank you all. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, and we also have Eric A. Hall, so we have two members of the Enterprise team. But nevertheless, good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. Just wanted to kind of bring this former brief on February 4th towards an actual resolution so we can begin preparing for FY21 and procurement of the next year's vehicle fleet. So I know that we discussed some of the concepts around the benefits of a master lease program. Significantly is just finally addressing our kind of chronically deferred capital needs for our vehicle program. So a lot of the benefits are realized in the initial years just due to the fact that you're ramping into the program by replacing on a kind of replacement strategy as proposed by the enterprise team. That kind of gives us the maximum benefit while not procuring vehicles in our current way that we do today. And then as you are kind of fully baked into the program, you start seeing the net benefit of the actual fuel and maintenance reductions. So total year over year, you're kind of sustaining that annual savings as you kind of stay with the program kind of on the schedule that you're looking for. So it probably would make more sense to gear this conversation more towards addressing any questions or any kind of refreshing of memory, as well as directing anything specifically to Eric and Casey, who are with us today from Enterprise, before we kind of move forward with this. So I'll leave it back to the governing body for questions. And thanks, Laszlo, for pulling up that slide. That's the kind of the net kind of comprehensive comparison between how we are currently procuring vehicles in the CIP year over year versus kind of what the comparison would be for every single fiscal year moving forward for about 10 years till 2030.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
And just to add, so in the two budget models that I presented, they did not include these savings. I stayed within the existing because the decision hadn't been made yet. So when you looked at the budget model with the where the reserve position was at the end of it, you can add some of this amount to that as well. So you get expanded savings to our reserves that then can be utilized for whatever the governing body's priorities are at that time. So I just wanted to add that caveat. And then for the focus tonight for this specific program is not about the specifics of our fleet. I think that's more related to the budget discussion, but about how we acquire fleet. That's really the focus of this. Currently, we're acquiring them a certain way. This is a different way for acquisition of the fleet. Whether we believe we should have the entire fleet or not, I think that's a separate budget discussion from the mechanism for how we acquire fleet. So I just wanted to make that point before we turn it over for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could, real quick, I just want to point out that what was in the agenda packet had the amendment. We've gotten an updated amendment that made a couple of changes that I requested. I sent that out to you folks earlier today. You should have gotten it via email. But very quickly, what it did is it just made a couple of clarifying points. So the original one that Norfolk, we're riding Norfolk contract, the original Norfolk amendment had referenced state and county legislative bodies, where clearly we aren't a state or a county. So we got that clarified, and then we also clarified that any litigation has to occur in Prince William Court or Prince William Circuit Court instead of Norfolk. So very minor stuff, but I just want to make sure that that's what you're considering if you when you vote on it.
And there's the non-appropriation clause, right?
Right, yeah. The non-appropriation, that's the stuff they added in the original, the agreement itself is in there, but in there it talks about counties, states instead of cities. So what you see there is changed to reflect the fact that we're a city.
In section 19, okay. I
Right.
see. Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Vice Mayor Banks?
I do have a question. In regards to the fleet lease program, I think I learned a lesson years ago. The city got rid of with the fire department, got rid of the ladder truck in replace of a smaller fire truck that it had similar capabilities, but not the same as the ladder truck. And I want to make sure we don't repeat that mistake or mishap in getting rid of any vehicle that the city owns right now that's critical to what we're doing in favor of this fleet program.
Yeah. So Chris or Enterprise, before you chime in, just this program is focused kind of on SUV and below.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking at, we're not, any of the specialized vehicles are going to still be procured in that separate mechanism, whether it's Calvin's, big vehicles, the fire engine, the ambulance, those are still separate procurements, but anything that's kind of standard fleet SUV, trucks and below, is what this is focused on. And Chris or Enterprise, if you all want to try and make that on the comparisons to the current fleet.
Yeah, so the original analysis involved kind of our current vehicle inventory. So I think Enterprise, kind of the largest, most industrial type commercial level truck they provide, I think is the kind of like the 550 type series, which is a pretty heavily leveraged truck that we currently have in our fleet for some of those kind of core community development type services. And Casey and Eric can probably talk to some of like the possible outfitting for the specific kind of upfit materials and equipments that need to be provided along with that. So, Casey, Eric?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, what I would say is we would work directly with your team as we have throughout this process to make sure that any vehicle that is being taken out of fleet in that subset of vehicles that Chris just outlined, that we work with the team and spec out a vehicle that meets the appropriate specifications for the requirements. And we would never, it sounds like there was a fire truck that was delivered and it didn't meet the specifications of the previous vehicle. We will work directly with your team to make sure that any vehicle that is taken out of fleet is spec'd out appropriately.
Okay. Well, just to follow up, for instance, the K9 vehicle, that's got to be specialized for the dog in the back. Is that going to be something as part of this fleet program?
I would have to look into the details. I mean, we would make sure that it meets the requirement, or else we would procure it separately. So if the specs aren't there.
Like in that example, Laszlo, I can speak to that.
Sure.
So that would be an example where we would probably have like an outfitted vehicle that if it was something that lines up like an SUV with like a K9 kind of like configuration in the back. Enterprise at the end of the lease, and Casey, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you bring it back into your network with that kind of future value attached to it after we're done using it, kind of then goes back out and then they kind of resell it on that next market as a police K9 type vehicle. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that would be correct.
Okay.
And I believe from my recollection, the current K9 vehicle is one of the oldest in the fleet.
Okay.
So it continues to have issues as well. So we're getting newer vehicles as well, so we're going to have better performance from that standpoint. But it's going to be, so even though we're centralizing fleet procurement, it's something that Chris works with each department as they kind of determine what the requirements are to make sure that it meets the specs. But we want to centralize to get the savings that we showed you before.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Machado, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, if we enter to this fleet agreement, are we required to add all the department's vehicles, or just as long as are needed?
So let me just understand the question. If the program is implemented, are you required to put all the department's vehicles under the contract?
Yes.
No, you are not required at all.
If I can add to that as well. So we have the flexibility to plan out what exactly we want to acquire, but we're not mandated to do so. So we have the same flexibility that we have right now, but this is, again, just a more efficient mechanism to acquire the vehicles. Now, to achieve those savings, I just want to caveat, Enterprise has recommended a schedule to maximize savings based on fuel efficiency, maintenance, and then resale value as well. Those are the kind of the critical components to maximize your savings. So yes, we have the flexibility to delay if needed, if we have a major recession, right? We have that flexibility, but you're not maximizing the savings when you do that, but that is still a flexibility we have. So that's something, an annual kind of conversation we need to have on the pros and cons of deferment versus pursuing kind of the efficiency strategy that's been laid out.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Machado?
Yes. Also, we can receive a new car after the 10 years. Is that right?
You're saying, so do we receive the car after the lease is completed?
Yes.
No, so the purpose of this strategy is that they would sell that, and then the value of the sale then is put back into the overarching agreement to build equity for the city going forward to reduce the cost of the entire fleet program. So they calculate what year is the best to, to maximize the life cycle, but also to make sure we recapture the most equity when it's sold on the market, and then that's put back into the program to keep the expenditures lower. And that's another aspect of how you get savings.
Yeah. So basically, when we procure a vehicle, the future value is set in that first year before we even use it, just because of Enterprise's ability to kind of understand their market, their ability to essentially move on that product into another network, and then our tentative usage of said vehicle in an open-ended model. And with a relatively degree of accuracy, that's kind of what we can then put back into those future cohorts to keep kind of that year-over-year vehicle cost, kind of what we're looking for, which is not just underneath a certain threshold, but like a known flattish cost, into the future as well, because that's one of our biggest concerns now is we constantly procure vehicles almost like on a basis where we have to, rather than trying to keep it in a more sustainable model into the future. So that kind of known asset that we have up front to invest back into the program is the biggest, one of the biggest core, I would say, benefits of getting into this program.
Because right now, to Chris's point, we're waiting until the current fleet breaks down, and then you're selling it, and you're getting the lowest possible return on your vehicles versus having a strategy of trying to sell it when you're maximizing the value in return to try to keep your overall costs down. So we're able to keep our fleet modernized, save on fuel, all while staying under the current budget.
Do you have a follow-up, Miriam, or are you?
No, I'm fine. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Councilmember Javed, comments or questions?
Yes. This is in regards to the manufacturing warranty. They say it covers basically all maintenance costs. Is that including oil changes, tire rotations? I mean, what does that include?
So we still have that in our shop. So Tommy would still provide those kind of like basic consumables type services. So you just said it, Councilman, kind of the routine type maintenance. It would be something where we are not liable for basically getting like a lemon, like like a catastrophic failure of like a transmission or anything of that nature. We would only be liable for, let's say, maintenance that it can be shown that we were not keeping up with, just kind of like the booklet schedule of the routine type maintenance. And I can pass that on to Casey Eric if there's anything more to add.
No, the only thing I would add on that is when you, to the point of the earlier questions, is as you lower the average age of the fleet, now the bulk of your vehicles are under that manufacturer warranty. So the only maintenance that the city is incurring is that routine scheduled oil change, tire rotation, etc. So it's going to greatly diminish the amount of dollars being spent in that maintenance bucket.
Yeah. And then also, that means Tommy's effort is then shifted more towards those larger capital items that we have, such as like the fire truck, or any of the larger fleet items that he has that, a lot of his attention gets pulled away, and this can help reinvest his attention into those other projects. So.
Fleet's staff levels there's a frozen position as well, so they're already operating with less personnel, so this just makes their job easier.
And would our insurance cost increase if we're leasing vehicles versus if we purchase the vehicle?
I think it does.
Chris, is that something you looked
They're
into?
newer in their lease. Well, because
I'd have to check with our city policy is through, VRSA. I would have to check to see if there would be any kind of potential savings there, but I wouldn't forecast it to increase because in theory, our fleet inventory would be more modern and therefore safer vehicles overall.
Yeah, but newer vehicles are more expensive to repair.
In my experience, there isn't really a cost shift because of the self-insurance aspect. And the overall cost doesn't shift. In the event that a vehicle does get damaged, the cost to repair could be more, but it shouldn't affect your overall insurance rate with your self-insurance or your risk pool.
I think, and then one last question, if I may. One of the slides you mentioned no finance payments to FY25. What do you mean by that? Is that a last question?
Yeah. So what are you saying? The no finance payments starting in FY25? You're saying?
We currently. I'm sorry.
Hold on. I just want to make sure we have the right comment.
Are you talking about the slide on the final bottom portion there, Councilman?
It's probably because of the leases that we already
slide
have.
8 on the bottom.
For
Yeah, that is the current vehicle cost that we've already paid for. So by FY25, we'll no longer be making any more payments on our currently, because those are payments with interest that we have in the city right now for payments from cars that we've already made. So by FY25, all of our vehicles will be through this model. We won't be financing vehicles the way that we currently did. So we'll be kind of fully released from our prior way that we would procure vehicles.
Any more follow-up, Councilmember Javed?
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you. Any
If a leased vehicle is involved in an accident and it's a total loss, are there any extra fees for the city?
No, there would be no extra fees from Enterprise for the city.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, but then how does our insurance work then, because we don't own it? Like, how would we replace it? To follow up to Councilmember Sendejas is then.
Yes. So if we need to replace it, then it would go on the schedule for enterprise lease. But usually when we have to replace a vehicle, we actually get the cash from the insurance. Never at 100% though. It's usually at around 80% of the value of the vehicle. We get that cash from VRSA, and then we use that to procure.
I had another question on another part of this was, I'm definitely the most pro-green person you're gonna find, even though one of the things that was talked about in this is about the gas savings in terms of increased fuel efficiency. But when I'm looking at the projections that in 4 years or so, we're going to have a fleet of SUVs and big trucks that average 23 miles to the gallon is aspirational at best. And given that gas is $1.95 a gallon, there's no market pressure to increase gas fuel efficiency in vehicles right now, given the current political and economic situation. I'm all for saving gas. I think that's great. But I think that that's aspirational. I don't think that's ever going to actually play out in terms of, almost a 50% increase in gas mileage in 4 years, given what we have.
Enterprise, do you want to comment on that based off your analysis of current fleet versus future fleet?
Yeah, so we looked at it. I mean, again, there's been some changes over the last 45 days to the market, but from a perspective of increased fuel economy and pulling the real-time numbers from the city, which was where that fuel was, and looking at the estimated miles per gallon for the total fleet. So we're going to have SUVs, we're going to have pickup trucks, we're going to have cargo vans, we're going to have sedans in there. I mean, that was based off of the real-time miles per gallon estimates that was traveling. Based on, there was I don't know, let me look at that fuel. It was based off of, I think, $2.50 a gallon, is that number right?
Yes.
So, yeah, and the market has changed since then, but those were the real-time numbers with the projections. So, I mean, it could not capture the total 184 to 144, but you're definitely going to capture fuel efficiency with newer vehicles.
So he's talking about the miles per gallon, not necessarily. So you can ignore the column of the cost per gallon because that's constantly going to change. But the miles per gallon, can you discuss how that changes when you move from the existing fleet that we have right now to the newer fleet?
Yeah, with the average age of the fleet today, when you input a new vehicle, and we take out a 10-year-old pickup truck and put a new pickup truck, that 10-year-old pickup truck is probably getting anywhere between 10 and 12 miles per gallon, when new 2020 pickup trucks are getting anywhere from 18 to 21, depending on the usage. So that's the formula that we use of taking out the age of the vehicle. I believe the estimated miles per gallon we used, or estimated miles per gallon, was about 11, and then using the new models of 2020 of what those are road rated for, that's how that calculation comes into effect. And then we use the $2.50 a gallon was the estimated price of gasoline.
Any questions?
And Councilman, I just wanted to iterate, I mean, that's actually based off of kind of where we're at right now. If you look at average mileage per gallon for that's based on a Durango. I pulled that analysis in. So they're already averaging between 20 to up to 25 city highway splits right now. And that's almost a 5 to 6 gallon miles per gallon increase in the last 10 years. So I would question the aspirational aspect because I think we're actually realizing that fuel efficiency increase.
And even if you don't believe the 23, it's definitely going to be above what we have right now. You're still going to have...
The FY25 is based off of a fleet age of 2022, and that's just for those types of SUVs. So, and they're actually projected most industry standards, regardless of federal mandates, no federal mandates, everyone's just trying to get to that next level because they know it sells vehicles. So even then, the market will continue to progress just because that's what the consumer wants.
Are you going to comment, City Manager?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something.
No.
Are there any other comments or questions? Anything?
So is the idea we're going to sell a bunch of our old vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. That was a simple question.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say, but yes, we would sell our old. You sell your existing fleet, and then you buy new fleet to modernize.
There'd be no point to hanging on to the old ones.
I'd like to call it reinvesting.
Are we going to, I have a question. So
Yes.
we're going to reinvest it into what type of, what are we going to do with it?
That's all built into this model, right? So
Future equity of more vehicles, just kind of keep that sustainability going.
Okay, thanks.
Minus the things that we've been putting on public surplus this year.
Mhm.
That wasn't part of that analysis.
So we're planning on replacing 30 vehicles in this next year, or is that up for discussion during
That's
the
still up for
budget?
discussion. That's just that's the recommendation. If we want to maximize savings over 10 years, this is the recommended strategy.
Councilman, that's, if you go back one slide to slide number 7, that 30 is not arbitrary. It's based off the fact that we have that many vehicles or so that are already well over 10 years old. And so in order to start maximizing fuel maintenance cost savings as early as possible, it would just be replacing that aging fleet as early as possible. And Casey and Eric, I think you can back me up if I misspoke.
Yeah, no, the only thing I would add to kind of bring it full circle is we just, Chris identified the number of vehicles that are over 10 years old. In the municipal space, 7 years is actually equal to 100,000 miles. So some questions are, hey, this vehicle might only have 50,000 miles at the end of 5 years in service. Well, again, as it approaches, to go back into the warranty conversation, vehicles then go out of warranty. Now the city is spending the dollars to repair the vehicle, but also the usage of that vehicle, the longer it stays in the fleet, the mileage becomes kind of irrelevant to the condition and the value of the vehicle. It is essentially aged out versus mileaged out.
If you look at the FY21 numbers, so if we go this route and decide to adopt this strategy, you're looking at roughly $200,000 in savings in FY21 per this model. And then you get some additional savings in 22. So it's a savings strategy. So it's counterintuitive, and you're going to hear from the public, why is the city spending money on new vehicles? But it's actually part of a strategy to save cost as part of this new program. So I know it's going to be a political challenge, but you're actually going to be saving money by following this approach. And so that's the strategy here. So we're looking for every dollar we can save. I know in FY21 and 22, with the current recession, I think this is just another strategy. Just like the library, just like everything we've been doing, it's just we've been finding every way to save money while not impacting current operational levels that we've had, right? And this is just another strategy for us to do that.
Yeah.
Are the vehicles that we want to replace under this, some of the older vehicles, are they actually being driven that much?
Yes, a lot of our older vehicles are, and until Tommy says that, do not drive in them because it's a safety hazard, and he's had to do that a little bit more this past year.
Okay.
Now, I can say for the last, even over the last month with COVID, what we did with the city hall vehicles, we actually gave them to social services because they didn't want to share the same vehicle to reduce, spread. So each person got assigned a different vehicle. So each vehicle has been utilized.
Is snow removal covered under lease in terms of it being under the standard of a generally accepted normal wear and tear?
Yeah, we have many municipal clients that have these vehicles outfitted with plows, and it is 100% acceptable usage. The city has all ownership rights to these vehicles. The city will use them as they were their own.
Yeah. And the reason we see extensive wear and tear is because our snowplow vehicles are 10 years plus in some cases. This would be substantial reduction in the operational stress if we were to only keep them for 5.
Councilmember Mensing, did you have a follow-up on anything that you have already asked?
I just wanted to note that for FY21, you guys still have the fuel cost going up. I know we had talked about that last time. That might have been an error, but it's still on this spreadsheet. It's showing increase, that it will cost more in fuel for the enterprise than it would for the Manassas Park.
We didn't change these slides, but Chris, was that
I'm
in
sorry,
here?
what was that?
Yeah, so if you look at slide 8, the fuel for the current fleet in FY21, the fuel costs are actually estimated to be lower with the older fleet than with the new fleet. So it sounds like it's maybe a typo, but I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think you guys had mentioned it was an error last time I brought it up. It just hasn't.
I literally just use that same presentation, so I apologize. Updates. Do you remember that, Chris? We're showing 184.
No, I remember that. There was a reason for it. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. But I don't remember it being an error, actually. I'll get back to you on that one, though.
That's actually a good thing, is what if it's actually, with fuel prices going down, and if there's supposed to be actual savings, and if this was a typo, theoretically you have even,
Right.
Greater savings than what's shown here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions or follow-up on previous questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Chris, how many cars we have that are older than 10 years?
How many are older than 10?
Yes.
As of this upcoming fiscal year will be, I believe the slide 7 has it, 32 vehicles. So that's of our total white fleet of 80 right now. It's about 40%.
And do we know how much do we spend in vehicles repair?
Was that just those specific older vehicles? Like how much more of a maintenance burden are they?
Yeah. So
I don't know that specifically, but that's something that Tommy at the garage can give you a breakdown, because you'd have to go by the specific kind of vehicle parts number and count up all the work orders on those specific vehicles that are 10 years or older.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you have, at the top of your head, a way to answer the question from Councilperson Machado about the impact of the older fleet on Tommy and maintenance?
The main impact of the aging fleet is the fact that we don't know how to fix a lot of the problems. When the beds of the trucks are so rotted that people just step through them, you know, they go to stand in the back of the truck and all of a sudden there's, you know, their foot goes through the bed of the truck. It's a lot of wear and tear on Tommy's, I guess you would say, his mind, because he sits there and he looks at, you know, the salt deterioration on major structural components under the trucks, and he knows that to take them off the street, essentially we reduce the number of vehicles we have for, you know, for plowing. So he wants to be able to leave them on the street, but he knows as a mechanic that a lot of those vehicles, you know, aren't structurally sound anymore due to the level of salt deterioration on the undercarriage. So he's there's not a lot we can do to fix those vehicles. So a lot of times with our trucks and the actual fleet plowing trucks, there's not a whole lot we can invest in them to fix them. We just, Tommy has to worry about when to pull the trigger and pull them off the street, when they're no longer safe for someone to drive. We do break a lot of plow equipment and, you know, break plow mounts off of trucks. That becomes burdensome as the trucks get older, and then it becomes difficult to fit new equipment to the older trucks. But that's, yeah, the older vehicles, we just sort of leave them there until they're needed for plowing. They're not the preferred vehicles to run around in every day. But when it comes time to fit a plow fleet, somebody's got to drive the old rust bucket.
Do you have a follow-up, Miriam?
Yes, I'm in favor for going with the enterprise fleet program, in the sense that it's not all only for fuel efficiency, it's for so we spend less on repairs, and also these cars can be reliable. For public works or for any other departments. I'm thinking about DSS. They use cars to work with the cases, and we need reliable cars.
Laszlo, this is Chris, and I just remember Councilwoman Mensing's comment. I just want to make sure that the Manassas Park fuel model is based off of current expenditure, so it's going to reflect up to current gas prices, and then we just projected it out. The fuel maintenance for Enterprise was off of a flat, I think it's about a $3 per gallon rate. So yeah, of course, in FY21 it's going to be higher, but in actuality that's a lower number, and it'll be lower going forward.
So they were using a higher...
It's not a typo, that's an actual forecast number, just the difference in cost per gallon.
Okay, so it's because they forecasted higher cost per gallon in that model?
Yeah, it was a more conservative number, so we were being more conservative in those fuel models.
Okay.
So are the cost per gallons different for every year in the comparison then?
No, it's a flat rate, but then for that first year, and then it fleshes it out for the rest of the remaining of it.
Okay.
So it's just for that first year you'll see the disparity.
Any other questions or comments? Anything? Okay. Staff recommendation is that the governing body authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign the agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management in substantially the form presented, including the master lease equity agreement and revised amendment attached thereto as Exhibit C, pending final review by city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay, now we move on to City Attorney boundary line adjustment between Bays Track and City Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of many items that will be coming before you in the next month or so, having to do with what we're calling the Phase 3 development. This one here is anticipating if you do end up approving the comprehensive agreement on May 5th, this anticipates additional items that will occur on May 19th, or will be before you on May 19th. One of them is a rezoning. That's going to be the next item up here, is initiating that. Another one is going to be a consolidation and re-subdivision of parcels, including what we're creating here today. The whole point is that we can have identifiable parcels that we can convey to VRE for the VRE garage, and also convey to the Norton Scott team for a portion of the Phase 1A. Now, I did receive I had a boundary line adjustment plat that's a part of the agenda here. If you'll pull that up, you'll see that, well, hopefully you'll see. What we're doing essentially with this boundary line adjustment is taking a portion of City Hall, which is essentially what's behind the parking lot here adjacent to where we enter for the governing body meetings, the gravel area back there. We're basically taking that and adding it to the Bays track. Now, that's not exact, of course, but that's essentially what we're doing. And if you look at what Laszlo's pulled up there, you can see the kind of that triangular piece there. That is what's being adjusted into Lot 4, which is the Bays track, and we're creating a new Lot 4-1 out of that. And the residual of Lot 3, which is, City Hall is actually composed of Lot 2 and 3. So Lot 3 is the northeasternmost portion of City Hall. You can see the residual there is now Lot 3-1. What I'm asking you tonight is just to authorize the mayor to sign these on behalf of the city, so that we can go down and get these recorded among the land records. Now, if for some reason you decide not to approve the comprehensive agreement, it makes no difference, because the city owns both of these parcels. If the gravel parking lots on City Hall site or the Bays track site, it really doesn't matter for our purposes as a government. So this does not in any way obligate you to approve the comprehensive agreement that'll be before you on May 5th. So I just want to clear that up. And then I'll explain more when we get to the next agenda item. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions? Councilmember Javed or Councilmember Machado, any questions?
Mayor, I have a question. What is the value of Lot 3 and Lot 4?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but the value of all the land, the city, in the comprehensive agreement, it's spelled out, but what the total value of the land that the city's going to put up for this deal is included, offsets the cost of the City Hall, the public facility. That is the kind of the meat of the comprehensive agreement. All the other stuff we're doing here is proposed in the comprehensive agreement, but the comprehensive agreement, the way we can use the Public-Private Educational Facilities and Infrastructure Act for this is because we have a public facility that the private entity is proposing to build for us. And the private entity is Norton Scott. So I don't have those numbers. Laszlo, do you happen to have those numbers?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. That was part of the public hearing. So it's roughly $1 million per acre. So for Phase 3, the value of the land, total land was $11.7 million for that. And so the $1 million per acre was for the residential, and then the commercial land was at $50,000 per acre. So the total is $11.7 million roughly for around 12 acres of city land.
Thank you.
Councilmember Javed, questions, comments?
Yeah, this is just, this is not including the lot with the structure already in place, the auto body?
No, no, this is entirely just a boundary line adjustment between two parcels that are owned by the city in anticipation of what you will vote on May 5th. So again, if May 5th, you vote to deny the comprehensive agreement, then the auto body, none of that stuff even moves forward, and we just have two lots still that are just slightly different shape.
And then there's nothing to sign.
Yeah, well, there would still be the boundary line adjustment, would still be recorded, but the comprehensive agreement wouldn't, if you don't approve it, then none of this goes forward. But the point is that from a city's, the use of the properties, it makes no difference, where you put the boundary line. We could have consolidated them, but we want to make sure that we have an identifiable lot 4, or 4-1, which is, if you'll remember what we're proposing, which will be part of another public hearing down the road on May 19th, if you approve the comprehensive agreement, is to essentially take the Bays tract, which is lot 4-1, if you approve this, and swapping it for the car repair site, if you want to call it that, the Leatherberry parcels, for the majority of those, and then and plus some cash. So that's a separate deal. This is just in anticipation of that. So this doesn't bind you in any way whatsoever.
Okay.
Just one clarification. So it's $11.8 million. I had said 11.7. It's 11.8.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Don't we own those lots anyway, right now?
Could you repeat, please?
Oh, sorry, no, I was wondering if we own these lots right now, what is the rezoning for?
Well, we own the lots, and we're not, the rezoning is the next agenda item, and I'll explain it there. This is just a boundary line adjustment.
Okay.
It's not, nothing else is going on here, just a boundary line adjustment.
I see.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Staff recommendation is that to authorize the mayor to sign the deed and plat to adjust the boundary line between Lot 3 and Lot 4. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado? Councilmember Machado, how do you vote?
Thumbs up or down?
Maybe she gave
Aye.
a thumb.
Okay. Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor here?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. And the next one is initial rezoning, an initiation of rezoning of proposed Phase 1A property in City Center Redevelopment District.
Okay, again, this is in anticipation of the, if you do approve the comprehensive agreement on May 5th, we would then have a public hearing scheduled on May 19th to rezone all of what's called Phase 1A. And Laszlo's put up on the screen a plat, a rezoning plat that I received earlier this evening. It's not accurate. There are a couple of things that need to be fixed on it, but it gives you the outline of what we're talking about. So at the right there, you can see Lot 4-1. Well, that's what you just authorized with the previous vote. To the left of that, you'll see 3 parcels, which we call collectively the Leatherberry tracts. Then you'll see kind of a triangle there that Laszlo's pointing out. That's city-owned property called the Millison tract. And then at the very far left is what we call the commercial driving school lot. All those would be rezoned on the city's own initiative. And the reason we're doing it this way is because we're really constrained with the VRE garage, what we need to do. And there's a phased, Laszlo's put up there the phasing that'll show that. You can see it's a little bit different than the exact outline of what I just showed you, but it gives you a general idea of what we're talking about here. But the reason we had to do this is because we really need to get the property for the VRE garage in city ownership in order for VRE to feel comfortable moving forward with the redesign and to move it to this preferred location. To do that, we had to make sure that the developer would have something, because you remember these 3 parcels are owned by a family, the Leatherbury family, and they are part of this this comprehensive agreement, or this proposal that hopefully will be all pulled together with a comprehensive agreement. They need to have some value as well. Okay, so the idea is that we, the city, would rezone Phase 1A to the downtown mixed-use district, which gives the added value to the Bays tract of the Lot 4-1, which gives that value that Laszlo just told you that for the residential is $1 million an acre. So that's about $8 million there just for that, versus you said it was $50,000 an acre
For commercial.
so versus 400,000. So that gives us the value. So they're going to then take the Leatherbury parcels, which they're valuing at, I believe, also $1 million an acre, right, for that one?
It was a little bit more. I think it was a total of $5 million for the 3.
$5 million, and then a little over $8 million for the Bays tract.
8.5 for the Bays tract.
Yeah, so there's $3.5 million roughly. We don't have the final numbers yet that would be put into escrow. So the city would get the Leatherbury tract and $3 million, and the developer would get a rezoned 8+ acre parcel for use as residential. That's their guarantee. So if this thing all falls apart, then at least they have something. Because you'll notice when you get to the comprehensive agreement, which we'll be sending out hopefully at the end of this week for you to review, you'll notice that there's a lot of places where you could just decide you don't want to move forward, and they need to have something there, because they're putting a whole lot of money into this. So that's the purpose of this, is for you to authorize us to essentially initiate it. Normally an applicant, the landowner or the developer, would come forward and do this. We're doing it on the city's own initiative for the purposes I just told you about. Now, just kind of looking forward in the future, there's also proposing to initiate the rezoning on the remaining 2 pieces, 1B and 2. You'll see up there on the screen. So the pink area and the green area, those are the next 2 phases. They're going to initiate that rezoning shortly thereafter, so that'll kind of be moving along after we've gotten this completed, and again, assuming you approve it. But if you do, then we're going to be moving forward with the VRE garage. While that's all happening, they'll be moving forward again with this second rezoning. That second rezoning will have the proffers that you will ordinarily expect to see in a rezoning. We're not going to have proffers here because the city's initiating. We don't proffer rezonings when the city initiates the rezoning. So that's kind of the moving parts there, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'll explain it as we get there, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them right now.
Questions? Councilmember Machado, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Councilmember Javed?
Yeah, the slide that's on the screen right now, on the bottom left, does that include that property that we don't own?
It does. This is what's called a comprehensive rezoning, so we can actually do a comprehensive rezoning where we rezone an area. It's not site-specific, so we're not picking on a particular parcel. We're doing an overall rezoning in accordance with the city's plan for the downtown area. Now, as a side note, we're also, one of the things, if the developer is unable to reach agreement to acquire that parcel, we're going to also ask for a public hearing to authorize the city to go ahead and attempt to acquire it. That'll be something we'll have to determine, after you vote on the comprehensive agreement, obviously.
Right. If we rezone that whole property, bringing that lot into that rezoning, is there any legal ramifications with the existing business already there?
Well, actually, no. What'll happen is they'll be grandfathered in their current use, and they'll then be essentially getting a free pass on the cost of rezoning to a better use, a higher and better value. Now, if we were downzoning it to reduce what they could do, there might be a problem. But here we would be doing more, adding value to their property.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
Okay. Comments or questions here? No? Okay. Okay, staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution to initiate the rezoning of the property comprising Phase 1A of the downtown development described in the proposed comprehensive agreement with the Village at Manassas Park, LLC.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Machado?
Aye.
Councilmember Javed?
Aye.
All in favor here?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to 8F, which we had flipped around. This is regarding school board adopted budget. I hope everyone had the opportunity to view the FY21 school board budget presentation on YouTube, and also to look over the budget book that was sent to us. I want to thank the chair and the vice chair of the school board for calling in. Do you folks have any comments or anything that you would like to add to the presentation before we start our Q&A?
Mayor, I have a comment.
Is that Councilmember Machado? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, most and for all, I would like to congratulate Manassas Park TP schools for the ability that we have to provide virtual instruction during this difficult time. Thank you.
Yes, we all echo those sentiments. Thank you, Councilmember Machado.
I was going to say is Prince William is apparently ordering $10 million worth of computers for their high school students to do on, because they don't have any capability. And I know quite a few teachers at Prince William, and effectively they're doing no instruction right now. They don't have a plan. They're not doing anything. I mean, they had a staff meeting today on Zoom, or yesterday on Zoom, kind of like what we're doing, but they're not doing a whole lot of anything right now.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah, so we're definitely ahead of our neighbors.
Chair McIntyre Yurkovich, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good
Thank you so
evening.
much for having us this evening.
Well, thank you very much for calling in, and just want to ask you if you have any comments or any additions to the presentation before we start our Q&A.
Yeah, I think that the only other thing that we wanted to mention is that Dr. Lane has provided additional information this morning about some of the state revenues. And as you've seen through our presentation, we went through what that 1.6 increase was potentially going to be spent on. As of this morning, it appears that what the state is going to go ahead and do is they're taking away the 371 and the compensation supplement. So that is something that is going to be taken away. It looks as if they're taking away about $69,000 for the VIP, or excuse me, the VPI program. In addition to that, one of the greatest losses that we're going to have is that they're going to be taking away the at-risk funding, which is approximately $800,000, and that is at a minimum. And we don't know yet if it's just the increase in the at-risk funding, which would be approximately $800,000, or if it would be the total funding for at-risk, which is 1.2. So at a very minimum, as of this morning, we have been informed we're losing at least 1.3 of that. So that definitely changes the information we have provided in the presentation. So I just wanted to make sure that the City Council members were aware of that, but that does not change the mandates that have been placed upon us. So although we're receiving a significant decrease in funding, we still are going to have to comply with the mandates the state is putting upon us.
So for the sake of clarity for us and for the folks at home, the state has reduced the amount of funds that they're providing for the division by 1.3 million?
That is correct, yes. And that's the estimate amount, yes.
Okay. Okay. Did they give a reason for that? I I didn't think they had had time to complete their analysis as to how they had to direct the $3 billion that was coming to Virginia and what was discretionary. So apparently they have gone ahead and made that decision.
The governor has made that decision.
I see. Thank you. Okay, who would like
So
to?
the sort of follow up with that, the General Assembly is going to meet on the 22nd, but that is the recommendations of the governor is to go ahead and make those cuts.
Okay, thank you. Questions and comments? Who would like?
What's the reasoning for the cuts?
The reasoning for the cuts is the decrease in revenues that the state expects to receive. And because of that, there's obviously less money to allocate to school division.
Same thing that's happening with all localities, including us, with the COVID-19 recession. Revenues across all levels go plummeting. So everyone's evaluating what can be salvaged and what can't.
So are they assuming that revenues, they're going to be hit worse than what the federal government will be providing to the state?
I would have to assume that. So what wasn't clear on the calls we've had with the White House over the last few weeks is whether the education support fund that was part of the stimulus bill was intended to keep steady state funding or to allow for the increases that were planned in all across the nation's states, contributions to schools. That wasn't clear.
I see.
So, but it sounds like each state has a discretion. If it depends on how much they're projecting overall revenues to decline. I think the goal is to try to at least keep a stable contribution.
Okay, I see.
That's correct. I mean, there was other cuts that don't affect us, so there was a variety of different cuts that are being made.
Okay. Are there any?
I do have a
Vice Mayor
question.
Banks?
So the state cut $1.3 million in our funding, and in particular, I'm looking at programs like the at-risk funding, and they expect the locality to pick up that slack, or is that the expectation?
It is. I mean, it's mandated. So we have to come up with the money somehow, whether it is readjusting our budget and trying to do everything we can to make cuts, or getting additional funding from the localities to meet those needs. I mean, obviously, we're all in incredibly difficult times, and very difficult decisions have to be made because, again, those things are mandated upon us, and so we have no choice but to provide it. And without the funding, that really is going to impact what we're able to do.
This is Randy. May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Is this funding for IEP children?
This is not specifically funding for IEP children. This is sort of the state has specific funding that is allocated to us for at-risk students, and so it is just a money that is made up of the ESOL program, the Virginia Preschool Initiative program, as well as special education.
Okay, so let me ask this in a different way. Would this at-risk population then possibly be referred to FAPT and then ultimately to CPMT and CSA funding?
No, that is not the funding mechanism we'd be able to receive that. FAPT money does not provide, except for specific out of school division placements and things along those lines. It is not funding for us to provide in-house special education services.
Thanks for clarifying.
I just want to raise everyone's awareness too. I know the mayor and I have been on calls where there's the localities across the country, the next round of federal stimulus, there's a plan at least to request funding gaps for what localities are experiencing. Because the first round of federal stimulus was really focused more on states and jurisdictions of populations greater than 500,000. It was 500,000 or a million? I forget exactly what it was.
I thought they were going to change it, but it was 500,000.
Yeah, 500,000. So there's a request for support to the other jurisdictions that are below 500,000 population because of the impacts that we're seeing.
Mayor, I just want to make one comment. In the I mean, we're just experiencing or learning about this now, this $1.3 million cut to our school division from the state. And this is really for our citizens and those who are listening, because there's always the assumption that there's coordination between the state and the localities, but there was no discussion or inquiry in terms of whether or not the locality or Manassas Park could withstand this type of cut. And there was no, discussion or even advice given to us. It's just the cut was made, and now we have to deal with it, and that's what we're presented with now.
When did the governor make this decision?
Not consulted about what cuts are made, because each, separate school division is hit very differently by those specific cuts, and they don't consult with the school divisions or the localities to be able to determine whether or not they're able to pick up, I hate to use this informal word, pick up the slack. They don't do that. They just make the overall cuts, and sort of the chips may fall where they may in terms of that. So unfortunately, as of April 22nd, once the General Assembly meets, we'll have a lot better direction in terms of what that state funding is going to look like. Dr. Lane just did a presentation this morning to give school divisions a heads up of what that globally may look like. So that we have the ability to be able to potentially prepare for that. But that is what's expected to go through on the 22nd of April.
No, the state doesn't usually consult us when it comes to any funding or unfunded mandates for that matter.
Mm-hmm. What was?
Well,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, what was your original increase from the state in your budget? Because I don't have it in front of me.
It was 1.6, but then a specific amount of that was for restricted funds. So the amount of money truly in the general fund from the state is the 1.3 million approximately.
So basically, you're going to be flat from the state.
That is, I'm going to say yes, absolutely. That's
Okay.
what it looks like.
Okay, and this is a request from me. Can you provide your ADM numbers for the last, say, 4 or 5 school years? I know you probably don't have it in front of you.
Yeah, if I can actually have a second, I can pull those numbers up.
Okay. Just the point being is that we've had at least 3 consecutive years of student enrollment decline, but there have been increases from the state in funding, and also from the city.
However, I think that part of the presentation that we had presented shows that there's also been a change in the demographics of our population, which despite the decline in enrollment, the demographics of our population has actually increased our costs. And then, certain areas of enrollment are also increasing. It's just not strictly that ADM number. But if you give me a second, I can actually pull up those numbers.
While we're pulling up those numbers, I think that it's fair to say that we're very similar to what is going on around us. Everything is changing on a daily basis. The fact that we just heard today of the direction from the superintendent of the state in how we are, how the funding is, how the governor is recommending the funding go. So it is just an ever-evolving process. Whether or not we'll alleviate any of the SOQs, none of that is the assumption at this point is that we're still going to be held to making sure that we meet the SOQs even without the additional funding.
Do you have a follow-up?
Is that something they're going to be discussing?
Mr. Maker, I have the data for the past couple of years. It actually is located on page 184 of the budget book. And one thing that I want to be able to go ahead and clarify regarding that data is that ADM only represents about 97% of the enrollment. So it's actually the enrollment figures that are important to go ahead and take a look at. And so you'll see that explanation, and you'll actually see the chart that demonstrates the enrollment on 184.
What number do we get paid on?
We get paid on ADM, but we have to staff on enrollment.
if you guys can read that. You want me to zoom in?
You got that? 3342.
That help?
Can I ask a question? What usually is the variance between the ADM and the enrollment on average each year?
It's usually about 97%, approximately.
Okay, so it's only about maybe 3% off? And
the reason is that there's an increase in the change for the enrollment for the regional special education program, because as you probably read through our budget book, we've had this discussion in past years. The funding for that is being reduced, and there's an expectation for us to be able to service special education students in-house. And because of that, our enrollment numbers are going up. And that then is a disparity between the ADM as well as the enrollment. That is one of the primary reasons behind that, has to do with that regional program.
And this is page
and
one?
So, as speaking, it's been larger in previous years, but in recent years it's been about that 97%.
Okay, thank you. And that's page 184, is that correct? Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Machado, do you have any comments, questions, etc.?
Yes, I have a question. Since we are going to have this reduction on state funding, then what will you have to adjust in your budget?
Well, we would have to, I'd say one of the largest components in our budget, or two largest components, is, the request for capital improvements, as well as the increase in salary for our staff. So those are the two largest components of that budget. So certainly from us, the first thing that you'd be looking at cutting is the capital improvement, because the last thing you want to do is try to, this is, the school division is really a service industry, so we want to be able to do everything we can to be competitive in our compensation, as well as provide some sort of increase for our staff. That is one of our priorities as a school board, is to ensure that, we are going to be able to allow some sort of increase. And, as I mentioned before, the state has taken away their $371,000 compensation supplement from us. And so that really is going to impact how we're going to be looking at any raises for all of our staff.
Could you remind me what the two capital improvement items were that made it into your budget? One was the high school front door, and the other was a roof. Which building was that for?
That is for the high school.
For the high school. And what was the cost for the front entrance?
It is approximately $500,000.
Thank you.
Councilmember Machado, did you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Javed, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes. I guess my question is regarding, I guess, their full-time employees in the budget. You guys are saying, or want to hire 15 full-time employees, 7 of which would be required by the state, and then you're going to take away 3 positions. Can you elaborate what positions you're taking away, and what are the required positions you need that we don't currently have?
The reduction, I at least addressed that, and then Ms. Rose can speak further to this, but the reduction had to do with the teachers in the Cougar, because we have lesser students coming in. We were able to eliminate 3 positions from there because we don't see them based off of the enrollment trends that we're anticipating. So 3 positions were able to be eliminated thereafter, and then I'll let Ms. Rose address the remainder.
Yeah, and that that was what I was going to add to that. It is because what we're seeing is we're seeing the enrollment shift within the school system. So as the larger classes from MPE start to move into the middle school and to the high school, that's where we're shifting those positions. So even with the elimination of them there, now the students are going to be in the other localities. So we need to increase the staffing within that function, within those buildings.
Do you have a follow-up? Councilmember Javed, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, I was kind of breaking up, but I got the gist of it. Did you address the 7 positions that were required? I think it's on bottom of page 18. I got to look. Hold on.
Yes. I'll let Ms. Rhodes, sorry, speak.
We have 3 new teachers at the middle school. And because of the increase that's coming from, that will go from the MPE into the middle school. So it's all class size related positions. High school. And it's also related to class size. We need to make sure that we meet SOQs for the class sizes.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have 2 additional for special education being added at the high school as well.
Thank you. Are there any
I
other
count that as
comments or
5.
Vice Mayor Banks, did you have a?
What I'm saying is that she said 7 were required. There are 3 new teachers at the middle school to follow enrollment, and 2 high school special education teachers.
Yeah.
Right, that's
and
5.
then there's also a guidance counselor, which is SOQ related at the high school. Right now, there is a counselor that is shared between the middle school and the high school. But with the numbers and the changes in the SOQ, there's a need to have an additional full-time counselor at the high school.
Okay, so that's 6.
I thought 1 was curriculum coordinator.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
No, because it's 7. So you have, to sort of just clarify what Ms. Rose had said, you have 3 at the middle school, 1 at the high school. Those are due to enrollment. You then have 2 special ed positions at the high school, and then the counselor. That should make 7.
I still don't get it.
Preston, speak directly.
I still don't get it. I see 3 new teachers at the middle school. That's 3. 2 special education teachers at the high school. That's 5. A high school guidance counselor. That's 6.
And a high school English teacher.
Okay. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I misheard
Thank
you. I
Thank you.
apologize.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So then the other 8 full-time employees are not SOQ related?
Yeah, the other positions are not SOQ related, but them have already been hired for FY20 that were not accounted for in our budget. For example, a bus driver, and so those are actually just reflected in the actual budget, even though we've already filled that position.
Okay, I have a question. So what are the other 3 positions that are not SOQ related?
Well, there are 8.
That would be the HR director. It would be the assistant for the facility manager, and then the secretary at the high school.
What happens if you do not meet your mandates?
We have to, unfortunately, meet our mandates. There is no choice. There is no option. I mean, we then could lose accreditation if we do not meet those mandates.
I guess
can they temporarily freeze it or anything like that? I mean, is that being talked about on the state level?
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, it is. If you do not meet your mandates, you lose accreditation. There's no, sort of leeway or anything along that goes along with that. Those are our legal requirements. And so we have to find a way in order to be able able to meet those mandates.
So,
guess
wait, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So there's mandates to, if you don't hire these positions, you lose accreditation, or to meet the goals that they set out. So are there ways to meet the goals without hiring the positions?
No, I mean, we have to actually hire for those positions. I mean, specifically, you have class size ratios. So you have to actually physically have those positions filled in order for us to meet those mandates.
I guess I'm just kind of confused a little bit, or
Sort
a
of
little
like the MS4 of
concerned.
education.
Well, I'm kind of concerned because, we've had 2 years already of declining enrollment. By your own estimate on the other screen, the next 4 years we're going to continue to decline, and yet we're adding significant more positions. But I hear class size is the issue, but we actually are going to have less kids, and long term, this isn't just a 1 year bump or 1 year decline, is that, we're going to continue for the next, 3 or 4 years to continue to decline. And yet, even with reduced funding, you're looking at, hiring non-SOQ related people. Maybe it's a mindset. I mean, we have to adjust to a reality where there are less kids and less funding. And with all due respect to you guys, just I don't know that that's being captured yet, and it needs to be, because we have less kids to educate in the city, and it's not just a 1 year aberration. It's a 5 or 6 year pattern of reduced children, and the city is in one of our budgets is actually going to spend less next year. At least on the city side, the only reason why spending would go up is actually because of school board spending, not because of under the flat budget. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it, but city, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Law, so I believe city spending goes down 1.3 million, not counting school spending. I think in the flat budget, but correct me if I'm wrong on that specific number. I mean, it could be general, but that just the thought that the city is actually spending less money next year, possibly.
Well, I would say that you have to realize that this budget was built based on the data that we had available on March 13th. Looking at it from and understanding what those SOQs are, and remember those standards of quality and those class size adjustments happen on a yearly basis. So there are updates that continuously go on. So even with a reduction in the number of students that we have in the school system, for example, even with our total number going down, that those numbers are still going up as you get further into the high school or the middle school and into the high school, because we have this rolling enrollment that is going up. So it isn't every year that we're basing everything on the same standards of quality. That is always ever changing, and we have to adjust based on those what is happening within that.
And really to kind of further that, we do account for that. And for example, that was the elimination of 3 of the positions of tutor. We're basing all of the staffing ratios that get set and mandated to us every year, and it's a moving target. So one staffing ratio that applies for 1 year could be very different from the staffing ratio for the next year. And a good example of that is the guidance counselor. We were able to staff it and meet the mandate, but then the state changed that mandate on us. And it had absolutely nothing to do with, our specific enrollment, because one would think with a lesser enrollment we would need that position, but the state changed the benchmark for us. And so we're not creating a budget because we feel as though we want these positions. These aren't wanted positions. These are positions that we are actually mandated by the state to have in place. And if we do not have them, we lose our accreditation. It's comparing enrollment and comparing FOQs is comparing apples and oranges. You actually have to look at what the actual staffing ratios that the state puts upon us, and then we're going ahead and filling those specific positions.
So the question from Councilmember Javed is not correct then? You're not hiring 15 people? Because that was...
No, that is actually not accurate.
Okay, because I didn't hear you correct that, so I just, that's why I'm re-asking.
Positions, but that doesn't account for the positions that we're eliminating.
So you're eliminating so I guess so I have a better understanding. Your net gain is going to be 7?
No, we also then have, and these are not the SOQ positions, but we have the 7 SOQ, and in addition to that, as I previously mentioned, we had added a position for the HR director, for facilities management, as well as,
the high school secretary?
The clerical position at the high school.
So you're hiring those 3 people, plus the other 7 you told me, and then, so that's 10, and then you're eliminating 3 teachers at Cougar. Is that correct? So that's net 7 plus, yes?
No, the total new positions would be 10 after we subtract out other positions we're eliminating.
So you're hiring for more people than what has been mentioned? Because I've literally wrote down every single thing you said, and I'm getting 7 new. So I'm missing something.
I'm sorry, I may just be missing what you're saying because, as I said, the new positions are the 7 teaching positions that include the guidance counselor, and then 3 additional positions, which again would be the HR director, the clerical individual at the high school, and then 4 facilities management. So that's a total of 10.
Right, I got that.
Okay.
And then you said you're eliminating 3 teachers at Cougar due to lower enrollment, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So that gives you...
We also added, and I think maybe this is the disconnect, we have positions that we had filled in FY20 that were not, that we had to account for in FY21. So those positions have already been filled. So technically they're not new positions. We hired them, they weren't in our budget, we had to carry over those positions to this year. So that is probably where that gap is coming from.
Is it just bus drivers, or are there other positions as well?
There was other positions as well. It wasn't just the bus driver. I have to take a look back to see what they were. Unfortunately, I don't have on the top of my head specifically what those positions were.
Were any of them SOQ related?
I think that are on page 201, maybe, let me check to make sure that that is correct. I want to say it's 201 in the budget book. Yes, so 201 to 204 talks about the entire, provides the entire explanation and the changes of the position. So if you actually go to the bottom of 201, it'll actually, and then there's a chart at the top of that talks about the specific position.
Were they not in your original budget when you approved FY20's budget?
That is correct, yes. Those became needs that we were required to hire for throughout the FY20 budget.
So did you...
3 of those positions were ESOL teachers.
Okay. So they were not originally in your original FY20 budget when you approved it, and we approved your budget back in May of 19? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, very much so, because they had changed, for example, for the ESOL, they had changed our, because of our enrollment, we had thought that we had budgeted correctly for that, because of the demographics of our enrollment, it became apparent that if we actually to be able to meet our ratios, we actually had to hire 3 new ESOL. So they became mandated by the state, but we did not predict them, unfortunately, at the time. We had requested the budgeting back in May of 2019 for FY20.
Right. And so, when I asked you guys in person multiple times whether there was a budget amendment for you guys for when we passed ours in January of 2020, you said that, that there were no changes that required a budget amendment, but what you're saying is you've added positions through this budget year that were not in your original budget. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So then why didn't we see a budget amendment from you that encapsulated the people that you've added since you created your budget last year?
Because we were able to offset those positions with other savings. So we weren't asking for additional appropriation from the city to be able to cover that, and that would require a budget amendment. What we're able to do is we're able to look at what areas we may have had savings in to be able then to cover the cost for those specific positions.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate that. It's just, I guess it's a little difficult for us to understand your process when we don't get the information in a timely manner, since obviously I don't know that anybody here on the council realized that you had savings in certain areas that you were able to hire teachers, and we appreciate that you have savings, that you were able to meet those mandates and that funding requirements internally in your budget, but it's really difficult for us to stay informed about your budget and about what's going on internally, and for us to be able to help you in a better way if we don't really know what's going on until April, the school year that it happened. And we want to be good partners, but if we have a lack of information, that's really makes it difficult for us to be good partners with you, because we're all in it for the kids.
And I get that, and I think, we're very transparent, and that information is shared in our school board meetings. Although we may not directly send it to the governing body, it's out there in the public. So it's not as if anybody has been blindsided by this. And really, I don't think the word savings is really appropriate. It's where we make cuts in other areas so that we then are able to pay for those positions because we understand the financial struggles of the city. We're very cognizant of that. We're going to try to do everything we can to pay for additional expenditures that come up within the confines of our budget. We only use coming to the city and asking for a budget amendment as a last resort.
It's actually a requirement that you come back to us if you change your budget in a meaningful way, and I don't know what the standard is.
It doesn't require a change in our budget if we're we're changing a certain line item to the next. Where it comes down to is that if we need additional money for a specific threshold of a dollar amount, that's when we actually have to do a budget amendment, but we certainly, because we don't get categorical funding, we're able to take money from one area and to use that, we can cut it and then use it for another. That obviously is not for every specific category because some monies are very restricted in terms of we're able to do that. That's how we do that.
So because the governing body doesn't budget and appropriate the schools based off of the categories laid out by the state, she's right that it's a total ceiling number that you all approve. So they theoretically would have flexibility within that. If you were to budget and appropriate by those specific categories, then any changes to those categories, correct me if I'm wrong, would then require getting approved.
No, we would not, changes in actual categories, let's say we are categorically funded, we would not need the governing body's approval to make changes within those specific categories. So if we found savings in one area in a specific category, we could actually use those funds for something else.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm saying between categories. If you were
Agreed.
Yeah. You can move from one line item to another, even within categories, just to confirm what I think we're hearing.
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess it's difficult when it's now April, the current school year, and you're asking for additional funding, and we're not really clear about what's going on in the current year. Is 3 ESOL teachers probably represent 65 to 75 kids increase in that program. That's valuable information for us to make a better decision. And I guess I would also add, maybe some of the non-SAQ related positions maybe aren't necessary in the current budgetary environment.
Yeah, and we got that, and that's where, we're here. This was a budget that was based off of, March 13th numbers. This was a budget that was based off of what our needs were. That's what we were mandated by the state to do. That's what the Virginia Code specifies. Clearly, we very much so recognize that, number one, that, not everything is going to be given, even in the best circumstances, in a needs-based budget. Secondarily, not only that, there has been a drastic shift in our economic environment since March 13th. So
Absolutely.
we very, very much understand that, and we get that. And that's where, it is about what dollar amount is the city going to be able to go ahead and allocate to us, and then it's us going back and readjust our budget. And clearly, one of the very first things that we're looking at is the elimination of non-mandated positions. That is, on top of that sort of, it's not one of the greatest savings. I mean, the greatest savings is obviously capital improvement and reductions then in salaries. But one thing we're going to take off the top is obviously positions that are not required by the state. But that's ultimately, a decision of the school board to make. I'm only one individual. I can't dictate what specific decisions are going to be made. That's something that has to be made as a consensus of our group. But certainly exactly what we'd be doing.
Can I update? Because you had a question earlier about city savings or city reductions in spending. So it's $1.9 million in the flat budget reduction in the city general fund, not including state revenues for the schools and federal revenues for the schools, but just our contributions to schools and everything else. However, I want to caveat that there's a $670,000 debt saving. So it's really a $250,000 increase when you're not counting debt, and $117,000 of that increase is for our contribution to schools in the flat budget, and the remainder
say that
is
again is that it's 1.9 million
decrease.
less
I'm sorry,
spending.
I forgot to include the majority of that's or transportation. So about 1.3 million is
right. So
if you don't count transportation, if you count transportation, the city spending is dramatically. I don't think it's productive to include transportation. Because that's really externally funded, and it goes like this. So I never
based
try
on
to
the project
use,
cycle.
Exactly. So I
Right.
never try to use transportation when doing a comparison between levels of spending. But the actual general fund budget of the city is going down by $414,000 in FY21, but we have $670,000 in debt savings. So it's really a $250,000 increase in the budget, $117,000 of which is our contribution to schools. So subtract 250 from 117 to see what's happening with the rest of the.
So we're only increasing spending by 133,000, and some of that's mandated VRS, and some of that's the 5% increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So actually, it is a decrease because if you take those mandated costs out for current employees, we're actually spending less on frontline departments.
That is correct.
And on the topic of the VRS contributions, the one thing that I do want to point out is that if the city makes the determination that they would like to go ahead and implement a flat funding budget, that budget that was presented by the city manager for the flat funding had us at $118,000 increase over FY20. However, based off of that budget, the departments of the city were receiving the increase in medical premiums as well as VRS. The 118 is literally a 1% increase. It did not take in consideration what our VRS increase is. Our VRS increase alone is $153,520. So if we really are wanting to be sort of fair across both the departments as well as the components of the city, one would need to, at least if you're flat funding us, provide that VRS compensation. If you're doing it for every department of the city, the school system should also receive the benefit of that. And so if the flat funding model is what you're deciding, we certainly would be requesting at a minimum, not taking into consideration the entire conversation we had had, it would only be fair to give us the 153, 50, 20 under the flat funding model.
$1.6 million in other revenue. She discussed a $1.3 million reduction, so they're still getting an additional $300,000 plus the $117 from us. So their budget is growing more than ours. when you factor that in. And also, when BML sent us the data of their increase, it was actually 2 million, not 1.6 million.
It was not 300,000 is in other funds. So I mean, unfortunately, that information is not accurate in terms of what our overall increases are.
Wait, you're not getting 300,000, or are you?
Before we were made aware of the fact that we were going to be losing approximately 1.3 of that funding, we in a very detailed way, went through what that money has to be spent on. It's not as if we just get 1.6 and, it's a free-for-all. That money is specifically allocated for things that we may not necessarily have a lot of control over. Although we have some discretion, there's a lot of areas we do not have control over.
But you are getting $300,000 more.
That they're losing that funding, and you have seen at the end of the day, we actually came in a deficit. And one can't expect just because we're getting additional money from the state that has to pick up our VRS. We have to pick up so many other things that departments of the city don't have to worry about. There's so many more constraints and mandates and things that are put on the school division that money, we may get an increase and it looks like it's a lot, but unfortunately that money has to go to specific places.
But you are getting $300,000 more.
But it's for medical trust, federal funds, and the school nutrition program. So they have to be spent on those particular programs.
So you're getting zero increase from the state?
I'm sorry.
Are you getting $0 increase from the state?
Essentially, we're getting a $0 increase from the state.
That is correct.
We can verify.
That's what we heard this morning on a conference call.
So can I ask then how the $500,000 surplus was generated in FY19 with these mandated spendings?
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear.
Yeah, can I ask how the $500,000 surplus was generated in FY19 with all these mandates?
Well, because we're very efficient in the way that we budget. And there's not one specific explanation of how that happens. It's because we, as I said, we do everything that we can to not expend unnecessary dollars. And we're very cognizant of that. And even though we do that, we hand that money directly over to the city. So it's one of those things where if we end up with savings, because we do not have any sort of agreement regarding fund balance, we're returning that back. It clearly shows we're very good stewards of our money.
The other city departments have done the same as well, just to clarify.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear the last comment.
That was for the governing body. I just wanted to clarify that the other city departments operate the same way.
All city departments being very frugal and very conscious to save taxpayer dollars. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, we're all in this together. I always
Right.
like to say, one cannot forget every one of our school board members are citizens of the community, and that's why we will always continue to be good fiscal stewards.
And you have to remember, in an organization that has as many staff as it has, there is people leaving, they're coming, they're going. We don't hire on July 1st, and everybody stays for that, for that year. So some positions may not get filled until later in the year. So it's just a much larger pool from a services standpoint of people and staff that you have to manage. And it's also, it really depends on the types of students that come in particular in our special education program. What we budget for, as it relates specifically to them, may or may not come to fruition. So there is always variables within that budget.
And I think one of the, sort of to add on what Ms. Rose was saying is that one special education student can make that difference for us. For example, if we have a out-of-district placement and we're also providing transportation for that student, or we have a student that has left that has very, very significant needs, And let's say, we obviously try to account for the students that we have from one budget. So let's say in FY20, we have a very high special needs student who we budget for. Well, then in FY21, if that student leaves, that becomes a cost savings that we did not anticipate. And that's primarily where the large amount of budgetary savings come up. It's a special education population where we have to be able to budget for them because we have to be able to provide services for them. And if we clearly have cost savings in the end, as you've seen before, we are very economically fiscal. We're not spending on other unnecessary things. We're handing it back to the city.
Oh, question. Are there any students that are identified as both special needs and ESL?
Yes, oh, very much so.
Okay. And also to know about also something.
And they have 3 of those categories. So you have, when you're talking about at-risk students, you're having both the ESOL as well as special education and economically disadvantaged. And we actually have a very large population that actually all 3 of those categories.
Yeah, and also to know, right now the federal government, a lot of the unaccompanied minors are stuck in the shelters, so there might be a good chance that we're gonna see a surge of kids enrolling in the middle of the school year next year. May I? Yeah, yeah. So right now, like, there's a delay of doing home studies or releasing the kids from the shelters. We're doing like the virtual visits for some of them, but some of them are going to be stuck until the health crisis is over.
May I bring up another, this is not a dollars and cents question, but, and I'd like to know, I think there's some community concern. I think there's some staff concern. And probably, maybe there's other concern here on the governing body, I don't want to speak for anybody else, about students who are attending Manassas Park schools who don't live here, and what efforts you're undertaking to verify home addresses of students and their families to make sure that we're only servicing Manassas Park residents or students of staff that are in the special categories. I understand that, but there is a concern in the community and about students who don't live here, who are going to school here. Can you address that concern, please?
Well, absolutely. I mean, although I think it's a little bit outside of a budget discussion, we do take very seriously in checking the specific enrollment of our students. We spend hundreds of hours a month being able to determine, the residency of our students. We have staff that are designated to serve those roles. We get any sort of information or, any sort of information that we receive that a student is not a resident, we clearly follow up on that. But just like in any jurisdiction, because I practice school law, and I can say from my own private practice, we're not alone. I represent a lot of families in situations in which a school district has been, disputing whether or not they have a residency issue or not. So we're not isolated in that issue. I certainly want the community to be made aware that this isn't a Manassas Park issue. This is an issue throughout Northern Virginia because there are fantastic schools that are being offered that families want to potentially take advantage of. We do our due diligence in terms of student registration. We follow the laws. We check all the boxes in terms of ensuring somebody is a resident when they register. Whether somebody commits fraud or they subsequently move out of the division and don't report that to us, that's stuff that we may not necessarily be aware of, and that's why we rely on the community. We rely on our staff. We rely on a lot of external sources to be able to report that information. And as I mentioned before, we spend literally hundreds of hours a month following up on that information. And certainly if a student is determined not to be a resident, we no longer allow them to attend our schools.
How many students would you say have been removed, for lack of a better word, and sent to their home jurisdiction, let's say this school year?
I personally do not know the specific number, but just situations that I'm aware of, I'd probably say at least a dozen.
Is that kind of typical of an average school year?
I can't say. I mean, obviously, every school year is different, you know, because you have people with different circumstances, different situations, so I can't say over a certain time period what that average would be, but I believe for this year it's been probably about a dozen. And that's give or take. I mean, as I said, that is strictly my guesstimate.
Okay, cool. No,
So would you say that you probably would never really know the exact number because you don't get involved in the operational details? Is that correct?
That is correct, absolutely. But I mean, you know, we have staff that are very, very aware of that number. As I said, you know, we are aware of kind of broad picture issues.
right. Could you share with us what ways that you validate residency? What factors you specifically use?
What I would recommend, I think we're getting a little bit off topic on the budget. I'd be more than happy to have that information sent to you. Because we can provide you very detailed information about what is done to validate the residency.
I guess it's just my concern for the budget, just because, you know, if we're paying for students that don't live here, that can have a huge budget impact. So just trying to understand that, you know, because I've had that concern brought to me constantly from the community side, and so, you know, I'd like to put it to rest at some point, because, you know, we're either going to resolve it, you know, and so that we can go back to the residents and say we fixed it, and I'd like to be able to say that, so that we don't constantly hear the chatter, you know, and I'm sure other people have heard it too about, oh, well, that person came to the bus stop in a car that wasn't from Manassas Park, and they dropped a bunch of kids off and they got on the bus, and, you know, so I guess, you know, if you need resources from the city side to help validate residency so that we can make the process better, let's work together. I mean, you know, we have resources as well. Maybe we can check water and sewer bills or personal property, or, you know, maybe there are other factors that would, maybe Laszlo can be creative on his side with staff, but to be able to verify residency. I don't know what the best way is.
I definitely appreciate it, because all of us, you know, have the same incentive to ensure that students are not attending, you know, Manassas Park City schools that aren't residents here. You know, certainly I'm very, very open to any sort of collaboration that we can engage in to check that. But the first thing is that, you know, we need to receive the information. If somebody has a suspicion that somebody isn't a resident, as I said, we follow up on any report that we receive. We just need to make sure that people are making those reports.
Is there a point person, I mean, so that I can just say, you know what, I'm not the right person, go talk to such and so person? Is there a point of contact at the school board that we should direct people to if they have those kinds of concerns?
Absolutely. Please have them contact Deanne Perez. She is the person that they would need to be able to get in contact with.
Let's go to our council members at home. Councilmember Machado, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes. For year, for budget for year 2020, how many students do we ended up having?
I'm sorry, was the question how many students did we end up having for this 2020 fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay, so give me a second, I can actually pull up that number.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I would like to know the number of students and what was the state funding for year 2020.
So in terms of the numbers, the actual enrollment would have been 3,651. That would be, but the actual total, and that includes the pre-K. But the actual total that is being looked at is the 3,483. And that's the ADM number, because that excludes, the preschool enrollment and then our out-of-division placements for special education and things along those lines.
And what was the state funding for year 2020?
We don't know yet what the total funding for FY20 is going to be. One big impactor is clearly going to be the sales tax revenue. And we do not know yet how that is going to impact us. And being that, the current economic environment that we're in, the sales tax that we had anticipated receiving as a part of our funding is probably going to be far less than we anticipated. So unfortunately, we do not have that figure yet. And we actually will not know that figure until August. That's when we actually will know the specific state number that we have received. Because unfortunately, it's still in flux at this point.
And what was the initial number of students that you anticipated for year 2021?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, the number of students that will enroll for year 2021.
Hold up, I'm going to look that number up for you as well. It is 3,488.
And what was the initial state funding that you were going to receive, approximately?
And this was what we had believed for the total for FY21?
Yes.
Okay, yep, let me go ahead and I'll look that number up.
Is the 3488 that she just said, what number is that compared to the 3651 or
This is
the
going to be on page
3483?
97 of the budget book.
Hey, Debbie, that number that you gave us, 3,488,
Yes, 3,488.
which number does that compare to for this year that we're in now? Does that compare to the 3483 or the 3651 or a different number?
That compares to the 3502 number. Because this is K through 12. It does not, these numbers do not account for either the preschool program or just the preschool one.
Okay. So we have like 130 in the 140, 130, 140 in the pre-K?
That is correct, yes. Between the different programs that we have 8 groups in total.
So some of it's VPI, but then there are other preschool that is not VPI? Is that correct?
That there's type, and then there's special education.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 2. There's 4 of them, I believe, are VPI. I believe 2 are special education, and I believe 2 are Head Start.
Oh, okay.
So Debbie, you mentioned that the number of students for year 21 is going to be approximately 3,488 students enrolled, and the state funding that you were going to receive was 29,670,000, right?
Yes.
And then you will, with the reduction of the 1.6 million that you are expecting, right?
It would be 1.3 specifically is what we were expecting to receive in addition to that, from specifically.
Oh, in addition to that. Oh, okay.
And that's what's going to go down.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not in addition, that's what's going to go down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that changes the number definitely.
So,
thank you.
And I'm sorry, let me go ahead and clarify this. The 29,670, that is what we anticipate for this FY21. And now we're anticipating it's going to be 28.3 for FY21, given what Dr. Lane has shared this morning.
Councilmember Javed, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was going to shift over to their capital plan project here. In your budget book, you state that that your greeter that you're using right now at the high school will be more. Is you're expending more operationally on that greeter than you would if you had this configuration at the high school?
And maybe I'm misunderstanding that. No, I mean, I believe that, and I don't have the number right in front of me, but I believe the expenditure for the greeter is a little less than $40,000 approximately is what we pay for them. Obviously, you look at things from a cost-benefit analysis over time, that cost is going to outweigh what the reconfiguration of the high school entrance is, as well as the fact that we as a school board do not believe that that is an effective mechanism to really address security issues that are present.
Right. I mean, is the greeter already a salaried teacher, or is this just a extra position? And can you use a teacher that's not, can you train a teacher to be a greeter?
No, not whatsoever. First has to be staffed at the front of the entrance for the entirety of the day. So we have to have someone specific for that role. In addition, you're not going to want to be utilizing, a teacher who you're paying, far more than what we're able to go ahead and pay a greeter. If you think about just the starting salary of a teacher, that's not an appropriate, from a cost-benefit analysis, an appropriate person to sit or serve that role. And the greeter has been in our budget previously, so this isn't a new position that's being added in. This is what we put as, a mechanism to be able to help address the issues with the front entrance of the high school. But as I said, it's just something that, from our perspective, is temporary, where eventually that the high school entrance is going to have to get reconfigured in order to be able to meet the safety needs of the school.
Just a quick comment on that, and we're all very, very concerned about safety and security. I found Board Member Paul Alexander's comment to be uniquely appropriate when he said we may want to study, what is the best thing to do so that it doesn't have to be redone on down the line regarding that reconfiguration. Because certainly there are many, many ways into a building rather than just coming in through the front door, if you know what I mean, particularly with buildings that have a lot of glass, buildings with no metal detectors, etc. So rather than to place too much confidence in one particular fix, I found his suggestion to be very compelling.
Absolutely, and we are 100% on board with that. As a part of that discussion that we had talked about first doing an analysis, because not only is it not just about the entrance of the high school in different ways that we may be able to reconfigure that, but but it's also taking a look at the overall safety concerns of the building. Because the last thing we want to do is be able to spend money on something that is not addressing the totality of the issues. And again, that just goes that, back to wanting to be efficient with the dollars that we were given and being able to utilize the money in the best way possible. So as a school board, we have discussed that is actually the first step in the process, is having somebody come out and taking a look at it to make sure that we're making the best choice possible and utilizing the funds in the most effective way.
And if I may make a suggestion, that step one, you may want to consider, if you're going to hire a professional, we have safety and security professionals at the police department. And I feel reasonably confident in saying that Chief Lugo would be happy to go over and give you his appraisal of what he thinks might be best for the entryway in the high school. And really, other concerns that you might have. He's a magnificent resource, as is all the other folks at the police department, and they're already on staff.
We really appreciate that, and certainly are absolutely more than willing to have them go ahead and take a look at them. I think that is a wonderful suggestion and a wonderful first step.
Okay. Councilmember Javed, did you have a follow-up on that?
Yeah, the second part was in regards to their bus fleet replacement. Seems like you guys have a 5-year plan, but then there's a year skipped, I think FY21, if I recall, to accommodate the configuration of the high school. Is that true?
No, we have our fleet maintenance director has determined what is an appropriate placement schedule for our vehicles, and we abide by that schedule. And there's a lot of things that go into that determination. So we know what vehicles are going to be. We can pretty much anticipate what is going to be needing to be replaced in a specific fiscal year based off of the average age of that vehicle, the mileage that vehicle gets utilized. We kind of can anticipate that. So that's where I think you're sort of looking at the 5-year plan for, I believe it's a 15-year plan, not a 5-year plan. In addition to that, in terms of this year, we made the decision not to go ahead and see there was a bus as well as a van. We have taken those out because based off of the recommendation, we believe that we can get more use out of those specific vehicles. And so we don't believe that they actually bid to be replaced. And so one difference between the superintendent's proposed budget and ours is we removed that after further conversations of whether or not those replacements were actually necessary.
Yeah, I think it's on page 51. That chart, I don't know if you can, Lazar could go on that screen. That just found it.
If I have them in front of me, yes.
Yeah, so you see that 1 year FY21, there's no bus replacement. I'm just reasoning for that. What is the reason?
Originally had it in the superintendent's proposed budget, but we removed it because after further information, we as a school board determined that it was not a necessity to go ahead and actually replace both the van as well as the bus this year. We felt that we could delay that capital improvement expense.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
If there's no
Yeah, so you're saying you delay. Sorry. So FY21, you're going to delay the bus replacement, but is it to accommodate the reconfiguration of the school?
No, that was not for that purpose. If we felt that that was necessary, we would have added it in. But as a school board, we had determined that we felt that if we get more life out of that van and that bus that was specifically question and decided to eliminate it from the budget actually was in the reconfiguration of the high school, the roof, and the van and bus were originally in the superintendent's proposed budget. We then eliminated the van and the bus. And that, it wasn't because one was another, it was because we felt they weren't necessary.
Right. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
How many?
Thank you.
How many buses does 300,000 represent? Is that like 3 buses or 4 buses? About how many buses is that?
Yeah, they run about 100,000 a piece.
Okay.
But special education buses, certainly more.
Oh, is it because is it outfitted with additional equipment?
That is correct. Wheelchair lift, things along those lines that are going to make the cost of that bus more.
I have a question. In the video that was posted, along about 35 minutes into it, there was discussion of both the speech pathologist and the contracting services for that same service appearing in the budget. It would seem that it would be an either-or thing, that it wouldn't be both. Can you elaborate on that?
I will defer to Ms. Rose, because I know that was part of the presentation she had. So the original budget we had the 3 positions in there, and those 3 positions have been kind of on the book, and we've not been able to fulfill those positions. So we had to, when we built the budget in 2019, we had assumed that we needed to, that we would fill those positions, and we did not. So we had contract services that they did not start, and they were not budgeted for. So we needed to account for that as a contracting as a separate item versus the FTEs. So we are not double counting the budget. We are saying for speech therapy, it's going to be about $150,000. If we hire, then we won't expend the contract dollars, they will be expended on salaries. So because that was honestly one of the first questions I asked was, are we double counting based on the head count and on the contract services? And it's an either or. And we're looking at it from knowing what we've had to spend, that's what we look at those funding it would cost us.
So what's in the budget for the salary for the pathologists is not sufficient, and the contract services would be immediately routed over? Is that what, or did I not hear that correctly?
No, I think that you heard that correctly. So if we look at the total contract cost, it costs us about $350,000 for the total budget. The $150,000 is the increase that we're seeing in the need for those services.
Thank you.
Hey, I have a follow-up question to the mayor. So in regards to the contract services for the ESOL students, do you remember, Tricia, what category they were funded by? Was it federal funding?
I'm sorry, there's no contract services for ESOL students. ESOL, we get
I'm sorry. For the speech pathologists.
For the speech pathologist?
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
The contract services you just mentioned, were they funded by federal funding?
No, it's a part of the basic aid within the state funding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a separate line item, it's specific to that.
Okay.
Are there any other? Oh, I'm sorry.
Our students are required, and we have to kind of shift and adjust the money to make sure that we we get the money to support the students for the services that they require.
Do you have a follow-up?
No. I'll follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
Are there like any type of services for when it comes to speech pathologists? Are there any opportunities for interns to work in the school system?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
In our school system, is there an opportunity for interns that are studying to become speech pathologists to work in our school system or intern and volunteer their time?
Well, I mean, I can maybe better address it as a parent who has children with special needs and also practices my law practice. There's a supervision component to that. You wouldn't be able to just hire an intern. You would actually have to have a speech pathologist with the credentials in order to supervise that. You know, and certainly one thing that we're looking at is we have some central contractors that may be interested in actually taking on the position with the division. So that is really where we're going at in terms of trying to fill that gap, utilizing the actual contractors and then hiring them as our staff members. You know, but
Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Of course, we can always send emails and make inquiry that way. Any final questions? Okay. Chair McIntyre-Yurkovich, Vice Chair Rhodes, thank you so very much for remoting in and answering all of our questions and doing all the explanations. We appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you so much for having us this evening. And certainly if you need anything else, please feel free to reach out to us.
Absolutely, we will do that. Have a nice night.
So much.
Okay, so moving on to 8G, that would be regarding city manager's proposed budget. And I hope everyone had the opportunity to read parts 1, part 2, view the videos. Very well done.
Thank you. I have a couple points to add just as a update. So I know we had email exchanges earlier today about kind of economic forecasts, the Monetary Fund, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, I'm sorry, the name slipped. They came out with their forecast today, and they're saying that this might be the worst global recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. So this is really unprecedented times, correct?
Yeah.
So we have to take this serious, and if the schools are correct that they are getting $0 from the state, then they do have a point that the city's going to have to figure out how to help them with the VRS requirements, with health insurance premium requirements, because those are mandated increases that they have to figure out how to pay for. And to be equitable, we're helping our departments do that. So I think it would make sense to help the schools do that. So we may have to relook at this budget if that is the case. We're just to try to communicate with the state and see if there's anything they can do to try to maintain some of that the funding to the schools. Because to your point, Vice Mayor, that it's very difficult for the city. We're facing the same exact thing that they are facing as they're reducing spending. We're facing the same thing as well, and we have less flexibility than they do. They have a much stronger reserve position as a state than we do as a jurisdiction. So there's going to be those localities who have a very weak fund balance who are going to be struggling to deal with this recession. So I just want to caveat everything that I presented on. My model for FY22 did not assume the same type of housing crash that we had in 2009, because that was really more of a housing bubble crash. This is different. This is kind of a stoppage in consumer spending and production from businesses due to social distancing requirements from governments across the globe. So it's still uncertain whether we'll have a speedy recovery once social distancing is lifted. But if you end up seeing negative multiplier effects throughout the economy, and if it ends up impacting real estate assessments, then we're in bigger trouble in FY22. Even what the model shows. So this is really significant in terms of challenges, and we need to have all flexibility. And I know I've been hinting at this at the presentations that initially we want to wait till the fall, and that's true, to understand kind of sales tax and meals tax impacts, and more importantly, how quickly they recover once social distancing is ended. If you look at those UVA models today, unfortunately some of the peaks may be pushed back to September, so I'm not sure if even the fall is going to be good enough for us to understand what the impacts are going to be, and then we won't know the impacts from an assessment standpoint until March. And so again, just like the kind of quasi decision matrix that I emailed you all today, I recommend we delay as much as we can any spending increases, because time is our only friend right now, and having options is our only friend right now to determine what we can do going forward. And if assessments remain strong next year and meals taxes and sales taxes rebound quickly, well, then that's a good problem. Then we can go back and then adjust things up. But if they're worse than what we're saying, if the IMF is true, if JP Morgan, if their forecasts are correct, then we're in deeper trouble. And so we need to have, we need to be extremely conservative and cautious in how we are pursuing this budget. And I know it's very difficult. We talk about, other kind of, when it was mentioned earlier about funding equity, our employees, they're the minimums that we have are, we're lower than a lot of the minimums of Manassas and Prince William County pay. We're really struggling. We want to help them out, but I also want to preserve jobs to the best that we can. So my recommendation continues to be to hold off on any, non-necessary expenditure increases until we find out the full effects. And I'm hoping the IMF is wrong. I hope this is not the worst recession since the Great Depression. I'm hoping that we quickly can rebound as an economy.
I will say that I completely agree with that. With all of the loss in revenue from various sources, with the cuts in funding from the state to the schools, I mean, this is nothing less than an economic disaster for everybody.
Yeah. That's kind of really the only updates I had, besides the departments are recording their operating budget messages this week along with their capital project presentations. If you were at the Planning Commission meeting, you don't necessarily have to listen into the project by project analysis anymore, but there were some reductions, but I kind of highlighted what those reductions were since the Planning Commission briefing. So we already did reduce capital, and my recommendation is going to be we delay starting a lot of our CIP until we find out, because that would be my first recommended target if we have to make cuts in FY21 beyond what we have right now, is evaluating the full CIP and seeing what we can remove there before we talk about other things. So I would delay as much as we can. Now some of these projects, are more of a cash impact, like transportation. We're getting that funded from other sources, but we also may have a cash issue as well. All jurisdictions are concerned about that, but I feel confident we can probably proceed still with the transportation project since we receive EDOT funding and other sources of funding, but other capital expenditures, not in the enterprise funds, we can continue as well, but the general fund capital expenditures, we may want to defer implementing those until at least December, when we reconvene to talk about the mid-year budget and see if we have updated information about what's happening in the local economy.
What, I'm trying to remember, what did the schools say that they needed for the increase in VRS?
153,523.
You were both talking at the same time.
It's up here.
It's 153.
153.
523.
This is what they...
No, just the VRS.
Yeah, they listed all their mandated, kind of mandated increases that they have. So we need to get clarity on this, but if this is kind of their mandated increases and they're truly getting $0 increase from the state, this is what we're going to have to figure out how to come up with as a city.
Well,
and that's significant. I mean, I briefed to you before, that our budget's already going down, so I don't know.
Because I thought what they were asking for was the increase in the VRS.
It could be, but remember, we asked them what their other mandated increases are.
Well, we did.
Yeah, and so they actually.
Because we said we would try, but trying doesn't, I mean, we may not be able to come up with
No,
that.
absolutely, we
Yeah.
not, exactly.
Okay.
I agree, but I think we need to continue that conversation and to figure out what needs to be done, but this is
I
a
think
significant challenge for them and for us.
But they, we also need to go back to them, and for instance, I'm pretty sure that they pay for every student, I think, to take the SAT. It's not required. That could be an area that they could easily cut that doesn't affect core programs or SOQ because it's not a required mandate from anybody. They choose to do that. And they also, I believe, every 10th grader takes the PSAT, and they do it on school time. And, that's another program that they could, they could do a one-year pause on, And, as we're looking, we're all looking to economize. We might have to all do things we don't want to do, but, maybe, they need to have some, if they're looking at $654,000 in increased contract price for next year that's mandated, maybe they need to look at their budget again too, because, it is about priorities, and sometimes we can't do everything that we'd like. Certainly on the city side, that's a continual issue.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we probably need to sit down together and really go over our respective budgets, and now with the state kind of cutting funding, and I would urge us to speak with our delegates and everyone to see if they can lift mandates on localities, unfunded mandates that they have, because they can't force us to do things and then not provide us the funding to do so during this. If the recession is what some economists are forecasting, they need to give us the flexibility here, because we're going to struggle even more than they do in this situation.
Is it the state that determines the SOQs?
I don't know about that. I think that's a question for schools. I don't know if
they
it's-
do. Those are standards of quality from the state.
Okay.
But I don't know if those are influenced by federal requirements as well. That'd be a question for schools. But I think it's a conversation to have with our delegates and our state senator representatives and see what can be done to help out jurisdictions such as ours. I mean, we were listed as potentially fiscally distressed. We were on that cusp. There's going to be unique challenges for cities, jurisdictions like us that were mismanaged prior. We've done everything right since. We've been fixing our position, and now we're hit with this. Just at the wrong time. We're so close to getting through all of this. So there has to be, just like we've been focusing our COVID-19 response on how to properly triage resources, and so is the medical community right now. The states need to do the same thing in terms of jurisdictions. Not all jurisdictions are equally equipped to deal with this situation. We don't all have the same fund balance. I know that's people can say, well, those jurisdictions were more responsible, and that's a legitimate argument. Other jurisdictions may have been more responsible, but they also may have benefited from a stronger commercial base as well. But I still think the state needs to potentially triage support to localities that were at the risk of being fiscally distressed, which we were just a year ago, and we were able to bounce back.
Some localities are just simply wealthier.
They are,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like Middleburg?
Yes. Correct. Yeah, there's some that
Yeah.
have the luxury of strong commercial that allow them to get through. Some of them are going to be impacted just by dramatic commercial losses as well. So it just depends how quickly we can rebound as an economy once social distancing is scaled back, and whether there's going to be any negative multiplier effects. If we don't have a real estate assessment impact, then we're going to be fine. But if there is a significant impact, then that's where we're going to have issues. And I don't know what else we can, I said we would target capital, we would target, as much expenditure cuts as we can, but we may have to look at other, if it gets to that point, other sources for how to generate additional revenue as well.
Wow, and also good thing / bad thing is right now lenders aren't lending, and in terms of the real estate market, and so a lot of sales are literally falling apart because people can't get, even good qualified people with high credit scores can't get loans because literally banks are scared that I was just on a webinar last night with my firm, and literally they are calling the day of closing to find out if you have a job or not. Some of these lenders, they'll call, like, if tomorrow is your closing day, they'll call on Wednesday to find out if you're employed, because they don't want to make sure that you're still employed from the point when you put the contract in and you applied for the lending. They want to make sure you're still employed, and some of them are even calling after closing to verify that you're still employed. They're worried that people are getting loans and then losing their jobs immediately after that the transaction concludes. So, but the good part for the city is there may not be many transactions. There may not be much loss in terms of assessed value, because there just may not be that many transactions, because this is the spring selling season. This is the busiest time of the year, and there are very few transactions that are
would be
going
the hope,
through.
yeah, for residential. The problem is with the commercial real estate is that income is a big factor for how those properties are assessed as well. So if incomes take dramatic hits, I do expect to see some impact in the commercial real estate market, even in our city, and that's where we may have the biggest impact.
It's only 15%.
It's not the majority, so that's the good thing about not having a strong economy, a diversified revenue stream right now, is that because we are so dependent on residential real estate market, if that doesn't take a hit, we're somewhat cushioned. Now, we're still taking a hit from commercial sales and everything else, but I think that's more manageable for our current fund balance. But taking a significant real estate hit close to 2009 would be really damaging to the city.
Yeah.
I would suggest to contacting our congresswoman in regards to the MS4 program and seeing if that can be delayed or eased. Although the Russia Branch Stormwater project isn't going to affect the general fund, it is going to affect us, and especially our resources.
And it hurts our residents. I mean, at a time where people are out of work, to be charging these stormwater fees on them as well.
But yeah, I concur with contacting our state representatives, because there's got to be some type of financial impact mitigation strategy, right, for localities, by easing our requirements and mandates. If you're going to start cutting things or cutting funding, like we just learned tonight. So just to inform them about that, and that has to be in the conversation now.
Yeah, they should not pull accreditation because SOQs cannot be met.
Correct.
Well, but the issue too is they're not doing SL exams. Are they not doing accreditation for this year at all, are they?
I don't know, yeah, because the test scores are dependent on whether you get accredited.
Right, and they've asked for a federal waiver for the, because nobody took, well, actually though, Manassas Park, they might have, because on the 4x4, some kids only did the first semester, so they may have already taken the SOL exam for the first semester class.
Another question, Laszlo, is should we contact our auditors who were just here last year about our situation, because our 10-year model is going to be changing a little bit, and their assumptions that they had, or understandings they had of Manassas Park and where we were going, just to give them a heads up and say, hey, we've been affected by COVID-19, and just to let you know, we're beyond our due diligence, just making that enhanced or extra effort.
Yeah, I had a conversation this week with the different kind of financial advisors representing our creditors, right? They're calling just to see how we're doing. So I'm already having those conversations and discussing kind of the recommendations I'm making to you all, that we kind of slow things down.
Yeah.
But I've explained that we've been proactive in expenditures already for this year. We've been proactive with the VML commercial paper program, with the line of credit to be able to sustain our cash. They were actually more concerned about cash. So what the cash impact was going to be, and are we going to be able to pay our debt payments this year? But I explained that we have these other cash programs to get us through this period. So they felt confident there, but they're going to keep checking back with us as we get additional information. But they'll call us, believe me. They want to know that we're going to make our debt payments.
We've paid most of this year's, correct? Because most of them are front loaded.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, the governing body members at home, do you have any questions? Comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, give a little historical context here. The Depression unemployment rate was at 25%. I think that was a Great Depression. right now, everybody's estimating that we will be reaching almost 15% unemployment rate nationally within the end of the year. That's almost half of what the Depression, it's just a scary time right now because the economy literally just sank in a couple of weeks. And it just, it's going to be hard to recover, I think, in the next couple of years. And we need to be very, I guess, conscious financially of what we're going to do budget-wise in FY21. So that's all I wanted to comment about.
I'd hate to say this too, but
agreed. Agreed.
we have those early voting requirements as well, which are putting significant strain on our registrar.
Yes.
Which is why she's asking for these additional resources, is because of, again, mandates. And I know there's value in terms of democratic values for why they did that, but the timing is just very difficult because unless they're willing to help out and pay for those, and there was discussions before that they were going to provide additional revenues to localities, but I don't know if that's still the case or not, to deal with the early voting requirements. That's an impact on us.
They may not provide anything.
I know, that's the problem. But yeah, we still have to figure out how to staff it properly and manage it.
And I think nobody heard about this until I saw an article this weekend. Apparently, not only is the early voting, but they've actually expanded in-person voting to 14 hours. They're going to be open till 8 o'clock at night. So it's actually expanding election day, expanding another hour into the evening. So it's going to be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I don't know
yourself, Lena.
And I don't know, and I know that yeah, that's what I'm saying is that's a long day.
Wow.
Hey, last one.
Yes.
A question. For our Parks and Recs department right now, how many people are currently getting paid right now?
So what we did is, there's still a lot of staff members working at Parks and Rec for the food delivery program, for the hotline program, cleaning up other facilities, not just the community center. So most of the staff is still active. What we did with part-time staff, we're still trying to keep them active as well. We're exploring potentially also utilizing kind of the extended care staff to help out with childcare for our employees right now who continue to work, and then with their kids being out of school, they're paying for that out of pocket right now. So we're exploring using Parks and Rec staff for helping out with childcare. So we're finding ways to continue to use them, but what we did, remember in the agenda item we had when this all started, was to continue the pay of our employees, especially including the part-time employees. But what we did is we averaged out what they were working for prior to the COVID-19 to keep the steady income to them, because we didn't want to, number one, hurt them during this time. We wanted to make sure that they would come back to us when we reopen, and we didn't want to follow, unfortunately, what's happening, where if everyone starts laying off employees and not paying them, you just make the multiplier effect even worse from a GDP standpoint. So where you can sustain your employees, which is why the federal government, as part of the stimulus package, they have the P3 program, the payroll support program, to try to help businesses not lay off employees, because the more that happens, the more the negative multiplier effects are to the GDP. So that was the decision that I recommended to you all last month when we started this. That was approved, that we continue to do that. That's what we have been doing. Yeah. So we've continued to pay people based off kind of what they were doing before this hit, and we continue to find creative ways for our employees to work. And our food delivery program has been extremely successful. We pioneered that for the region, and our Parks and Rec staff have taken the lead, been innovative in providing great food aid to our residents. We're starting to see an uptick in our Spanish-speaking community over the last week and a half, asking for help as well. And we're starting to see requests from residents which are not unreasonable about PPE support, so personal protective equipment, right? If we're going to reopen the economy eventually, how do we do that, right? How do we, what's the phased approach? I'm hoping the federal government and the states can work together to figure out what that is, but you're going to have armed people with the ability to, to have masks and gloves and other things when we reopen the economy. So we're starting to get those inquiries.
The reason,
Yeah.
sorry, cut you off, but the government is providing unemployment to people that have been laid off. They increased it almost 800 a week. Wouldn't that take some of the burden off of us, to kind of give them an unemployment letter so they could get paid from the government?
It could theoretically.
It's temporary.
But we would then potentially lose our employee base. But it's something I can evaluate if that's the direction you all want to.
That's $600 a week, and it only goes until July 25th.
So the question is what's going to happen afterwards, and then you're going to have another large unemployment surge if they don't extend those benefits.
Yeah, and I've heard that the lines are crazy right now. Randy's been trying to communicate with them to figure out what our unemployment rate is right now as a city. They're just completely overwhelmed as a staff. They're managing the dramatic increase in unemployment applications as Randy's department is with all other benefits as well.
Wow.
So right now we can't even determine what our city unemployment rate is, but we know it's high.
Is that a job where Parks and Rec staff could go over and answer phones in the department to ask directory assistants kind of questions to help the staff?
For the unemployment commission? Or for who?
Well, for our social services department, as you're saying.
Unemployment, you can go online. I mean, I helped a couple people. It literally takes 5 minutes to apply, and you get paid literally the next week.
I mean,
and they have extended the deadline for up to 26 weeks from March 1st. So I mean, it's almost about 4 to 6 months of unemployment. And they increased the rate too. Previously it was 300 and 600 and now 800 a week. So some people can get paid more from unemployment right now than they would be getting paid hourly part-time at Parks and Rec.
It's only $600 a week, and it is until July 25th because I got the letter this morning. And as for the website, yes, you can apply in 5 minutes. And I was accepted, and I got week 1, and then I got denied somehow for week 2 and 3. Trying to call, they open at 8:15 in the morning. I call them at 8:15. I am number 568 on hold. I finally got to talk to someone at 3:30 p.m.
Oh my God.
Unemployment is not fun.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Well, it's not something we want our Parks and Rec people to have to go through.
I would concur with that. And a lot of, when we came back from, Afghanistan and Iraq, like I got out right after the Great Recession. There was no jobs. And everyone really struggled with. It's not, you're right, it's not the funnest thing to have to go through. So I do sympathize with everyone who's going through.
I guess that my question is do we have Parks and Rec or any other staff in the city that's not directly working at the moment that could assist Randy and her staff at
It's tough because of, all the employees that work for Randy, they're screened by the state. So we don't, they have to apply through the state to even work there. So Randy, it's coordination effort for any time she gets an intern, anytime she gets an employee, it's regulated by the state. But I can ask her if there's some things, but it's such a protected, I can't see the data that, that they're managing. I'm a signatory to a lot of things that the state requires. I'm not even privy to a lot of the data they have.
I guess I was just thinking maybe.
Laszlo, I am still here on the line.
Great. Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure if you were or not.
That's okay. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
I was just thinking maybe, we have employees in the city that could help you, I don't know, secretarial-wise or answering the phone or directing clients. I mean, I know your office is closed for the public, but that might be able to help with kind of some directory assistance kind of things so that it frees up your staff to actually work on cases and that kind of thing.
As Laszlo mentioned, the Parks and Rec staff have really stepped up with helping with the food hotline. As you're well aware, the sheltering and this type of responsibility falls under DSS, and the fact that the Parks and Rec Center is closed, allowing that group of staff to help out is helping DSS out. It's ensuring that the DSS staff are continuing to process the increase in SNAP benefits, Medicaid benefit applications that we're receiving. So right now, I'm so very thankful that Parks and Rec staff are available to help out. It's been a great process. Everyone that we've been working with has been absolutely fantastic, and I'm reminding my benefits staff on a regular basis that the fact that Parks and Recs is able to help out right now is offsetting the extra duties that we would have to piggyback on or figure out how to work into our normal day. So, you know, what Laszlo just mentioned is absolutely correct and true. You're welcome.
Yes, regarding looking at the option of why the employees, part-time, full-time, in any status of the employee, the city employees, why don't look on the option to maybe they are better off being laid off. I don't agree 100% with that. Please do not consider that idea. And also, I would like a list of capital improvement plans through the departments, including the school board budgets that we can probably reduce for the next 2 years, fiscal years, so we can improve our budget.
Yeah, I think that's our best option is look at the CIP and seeing what, the problem is things break down, and then what do you do at that point? Like the vehicles, that's a big one. That's where we deferred a lot, and then last year we had to come back because Tommy just couldn't allow anyone to drive a certain vehicle anymore. It was decommissioned, and then we had to come back and get it. So I think that's the best approach is focusing on what's breaking down at this point and deferring everything else until we know, what we can do to bounce back from this. I agree.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank God we did that refunding.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah.
And the borderline adjustment, that
The borderline adjustment,
$500,000.
$500,000.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That came
Thank
in
you,
handy.
Prince William.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Laszlo and Dean.
Yeah.
that
Oh,
was
Dean's
great.
not here anymore. Yeah.
It was the right thing to do at the right time.
Yeah. I just also wanted to say thank you for recommending the pump station lift that we did. I don't know, was it like 3 months ago? I don't know when we did it, but over the weekend, Prince William Service Authority had a sewage, I don't know what you call it, but it spilled, I guess, because of, I think it was a pump station and it was a lift or something. It sounded very similar to what we did.
No, actually, it was the trigger. When the sensor senses something's wrong, it triggers the backup generator, and it was the trigger of the generator is what went.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. But it was,
Yeah.
but it's
The
something.
pump was fine.
But it's something small that
Yeah.
ended up leading to a really big
Yeah.
problem. And, I mean, even Prince William Service Authority, they're a very large organization, they know how to do these things, and even, so it can happen to the best people.
And they went over as soon as they could, but there was still, the sewage leaked, I guess it was to fill up the size of an average room.
Wow.
Which is, it may not seem like much, but
it's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah, that's a
So
lot.
thank you for having us do that
Yeah.
because, we're maintaining our water and sewer infrastructure so that we don't have accidents like that, because they're easy to happen.
That's all Alan and Calvin. They're the
I do have
experts
one,
in that.
one question. You mentioned in the budget that the assessments went up, 5%?
They did, yeah.
Was there
5%
any
this year.
explanation of the reason behind that, or?
We've been seeing a good increase. Like, we just got above the pre-2009 levels just 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Everyone else did, a few years before that,
Right.
and they kept growing. So our city is just kind of catching up to everyone else, which is why we continue to see this. It's more of a catch-up increase. reflecting that. Remember, with every time that COG tells us we have a housing shortage, it's true. You see what's happening in my hometown in the Bay Area. The supply just didn't keep up with demand for housing, and assessment values just continue to skyrocket. Unfortunately, it could price people out of the market as well if you don't allow supply to keep up with demand. But that, we've continued to see that. We always were conservative in just saying, okay, let's forecast a 2.5% increase, but we've been constantly beating that, because what we didn't want to do is forecast a 5%, and then one year we get 2.5%, and now you have to talk about cutting. So we always try to have a conservative estimate, and it actually pays off for 22, because when you look at the model, I'm actually assuming a net decrease from the model of roughly 7.5% change decrease in assessment valuations, because again, I don't see the 40% collapse like what happened in 2009, because that was a different type of recession. I'm hoping I'm right. There's other forecasts that are saying that, but then you just don't know what can happen, and that's my concern. That's why I'm saying we need to wait. But I'm hoping that that's not the case. I hope we don't have because for the reason why the state can potentially see a bigger impact than us is because they're more dependent on income taxes. We're more dependent on real estate assessments. So if real estate assessments stay fine, localities actually be better off than the state, who's dependent on income taxes. So that might be what we find out here over the next year and a half.
Right.
But if we end up seeing a housing crash because people are out of work, and you start seeing a lot of people not being able to pay their mortgage. I know the federal government's trying to deal with that through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the stimulus bill to help people not default on their mortgage. And there's a very good reason for that, because you don't want 2009 again.
Right.
So I'm hoping that all those things will work, and we won't have a collapse in the real estate market.
Yeah, that's a concern, because everyone's leveraged up to the banks, and then you have a collapse. But there's the other side to this, and that's, like you mentioned, Laszlo, is the way we're like 70% or 75% dependent on property taxes. We might be able to weather this because of that mix. However, or even if we're weathered, our recovery won't be V-shaped, but it'll be better than other localities that are more dependent on commercial.
Correct. The only difference is with other localities where I was jealous in my conversations with others is those who are smaller and have a lot of grocers and drive-through, like Chick-fil-A's. Those are doing very well.
Oh,
right. So it's helped, especially grocery stores. You saw the mass kind of purchase of items, so that's helped cushion. But if the more dine-in restaurants you have for the share economy, the bigger hit you're taking. Movie theaters, things like that. That's where you're taking the hit. Drive-through restaurants, some instances, and the grocery stores are still doing well, and sometimes especially for the grocery stores, even better. So that's helped cushion some of the other jurisdictions in terms of we're primarily dine-in restaurants. So that's a concern with us.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, any other comments or questions? Miriam, any questions?
Not right now.
Okay. Hasib?
Yeah, I just, wouldn't the real estate assessment be affected with an increase in foreclosures?
It would, absolutely. That's the concern again, is if you start seeing that happen and the entire real estate market takes an impact, then yes, you're going to see I'm just hoping it's not at the same level as 2009, because you had a lot of other factors in 2009 that created that mess. So I'm hoping this is different from that.
Well, Amazon.
Yes, I mean, I've managed right now for landlords about 50 properties, and I'm getting floods of emails and calls from tenants saying they're not able to pay. So the landlord's method is that, well, if they can't pay, we can't pay the mortgage, and we're just going to let that house go foreclosed.
Leveraged up.
And it's just crazy what I hear.
Yeah, that's a huge risk. That's a huge concern where if that drives, massive decline like 2009 in the real estate market, then yes, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't even know that
we can always survive.
Well, do we want to conclude the discussion and then send all of our thoughts to city manager? Okay? Okay. Manager's report.
Yeah, the only item I had there, I sent you an email, I believe, yesterday about the whole leash issue. So we had a pit bull attack one of our residents about a week ago. That's unacceptable. The dog was not properly leashed. We've just, we've continuously seen our, residents justifiably complaining. Some residents have phobias of dogs, and they have the right to use our parks, and people need to obey that leash law. So my recommendation has been to advertise a period to let people know, because police have been giving warnings, but we need to start picking up enforcement of this so people will leash their dogs before we have an attack on a kid or something, right? That's something we don't. You see that on the news sometimes, and it's something we want to avoid. So I wanted to see if there was any objections to us, because I know with what happened with the cul-de-sacs, I don't want to repeat the same kind of public backlash as well. So I wanted to.
So how does everybody feel about the 30-day warning prior to ticketing?
I mean, I think that people need to be responsible with their dogs. I mean, if they're on their own private property, that's one thing.
Well, they do, so that's to the point. That's why we're talking about this.
Right. I mean, but some people are not, and they're not responsible
Right.
in public areas. Like, this isn't your backyard.
Then they'll receive a ticket for being in violation of leash laws.
How much is the ticket?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Is it possible to print up like a big poster, like maybe in front of like Blooms Park, or maybe in front of, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to be hokey, but just like a poster or something to put at the entrance of Blooms Park, maybe Signal Hill, reminding people like you're required to have your dog on a leash, and if not, you could be
we can
fined.
do that, but this happens across the city. It happens on the sidewalks, on the grassy areas, in the parks. You name it, it's happening all over. In fact, the attack was not far from the individual's home. So,
The VMS sign at Blooms Park has said for months, leash your dog.
Okay.
But we'll, regardless, we'll get it out. All social media, we'll do the best we can to get that information out.
I guess unfortunately, unless you start finding people, it doesn't get through. Like, you
Right.
really have to almost have to start doing it. And if
Right, well,
people get the message-
that's exactly what we want to do. But how do you feel about the 30-day warning period?
Maybe we need to just do 15. I mean, it sounds like it's an issue, and because people are kind of outside because they can't go inside other places, it could happen a lot more because there's just more people now outside in kind of shared spaces.
Well, I want to go on record as saying 15's not enough. It needs to be 30, because we don't want another situation where people are blindsided.
Yeah, but we don't want people to end up in the hospital for a
No,
dog
we-
bite
no,
with
we absolutely do
coronavirus.
not. Yeah.
We don't want them to end up in the
And
ER.
it was very unusual. I mean, I don't think I've heard of a pit bull attack in Manassas Park quite like the one that happened.
Was it serious?
Yeah, it was serious. Yeah, it was.
I don't think this is the same as the cul-de-sac parking. Parking wrong in a cul-de-sac isn't going to hurt anybody or injure anybody. And leash laws,
Okay.
the people in the cul-de-sac justifiably say that they didn't know they were breaking the law, but you know you're breaking the law when you take your dog off a leash.
I wonder how many people really know that. They don't stop to think that, oh, I can't let my dog run. They go to the park and they think, oh, I can take this leash off and exercise my dog,
We have a dog park, right, at Costello?
Well, right now, I don't know that you could maintain social distancing at the dog park.
It was an issue early on.
If everybody goes there.
It was an issue early on in terms of
Yeah,
social
okay.
distancing, so you want to limit you don't want to actively promote, hey, everyone go to the dog park and be close
Right.
to each other. But you're right, there is the dog park option. But, I agree, I'm concerned about tax, because you're right, there are a lot more people in the parks now during the day, and a lot more dogs. We just don't want to avoid issues right now. That's right, you don't want to have to go to the ER right now.
No.
Right, I mean,
Everything
because
that
you're
they're
putting
dealing
yourself at
with.
risk of contracting another disease while you're there.
Correct, and they're overwhelmed as it is, so the tension is just not going to be the same. Some hospitals, from my understanding, they're limiting the number of people, so you might not even be able to accompany your relative as they go in.
Wow.
So it's a scary time to have to go to the hospital right now.
Do we have, can we put it on the I call it the Jumbotron, the big sign?
The message boards.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a classic way to get the message out.
Is it sitting, where is it sitting now? Down by Public Works, right?
Unleash your-
On Manassas Drive?
We have it
Leash your
multiple
dogs.
places.
Lease your dogs or ticket. Unleash
We've
your
been,
dogs.
we've been advertising the hotline on that, so it's been spread out across the city, but we can see about that.
Leash it or ticket? Yeah, click it or ticket, leash it or
Oh,
ticket.
yeah, it doesn't rhyme though.
I'm sure they'll figure out the wording.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we want to do?
We have 115-day.
I'm with the 15-day.
I'm 30. What are
I'm
you?
30.
30.
Wow.
I'm 30 days.
Hasib?
Yeah, 30 days for me too.
That's what I did.
Okay.
People are self-quarantining right now, so they might not see the sign.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully
then-
people will change their behavior even before that, knowing that
Yeah.
this is coming.
Mhm.
If you've already received a warning, you're going to get a ticket because you've already,
Yeah.
you're in the system, so that will happen.
Can we do a Facebook post? That'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do.
That'll take care of it.
Also, can we keep the ticket fee double digits?
Yeah, let
Once
me
your
look at-
friend
let me
email
try to
me.
find it.
$250 fine for a leash.
Oh.
Is Petco an essential business that's open?
Let me find out what it is, and I'll get back to you on what the
Okay.
the amount is.
Do you have anything else for manager's
No.
report? Okay.
But
No
we'll have time to
closed-
adjust the fee down if
I beg your
if we're
pardon?
doing 30 days, we'll have time to adjust it at the May 5th meeting if it's too high.
Okay.
Right now, if it's $250, we can.
I have a feeling the individual that had the incident would not think it's too high.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
No, you're right, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. No closed meeting. I guess we're done. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Hasib, are you an aye?
Yes.
I guess.
Okay.
Hasib wants to
And
do
Mary
more.
is. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.